Good evening. This is the regular meeting of the Ojai Planning Commission, Wednesday, December 18th, 2013. Members of the public wishing to address the Planning Commission on items appearing on the agenda are requested to complete a speaker's card and file it with the Secretary prior to the start of the meeting. Cards are available in the lobby. Speakers should state their name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Comments must be directed to the Commission and not to the audience. While Planning Commission is in session, all in attendance are expected to maintain order and decorum and to obey orders of the Chair. Roll call, please.
Osborne, Crabtree.
Here.
Becker.
Here.
Foster.
Here.
Merck.
Here.
Nicklin.
Here.
Nolan.
Yes, we're here.
Commissioner Becker, we do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public communications. The public communications item is for members of the public wishing to address the Planning Commission on items of city business other than the scheduled agenda items. Matters raised at this time may be briefly discussed by the Commission and will generally be referred to staff and or placed on a subsequent agenda. Under state law, other than for emergency items, no action or non-agendized items can be taken at this meeting. Do we have anybody? It's open public hearing. Anyone from the floor? No? Thank you. Consent item. The consent calendar is approved by roll call vote on one motion. Should any member of the Commission wish to discuss or disapprove an item, it must be removed from the consent calendar and considered as a separate item. I'd like to approve the minutes of the December 4th meeting, please.
I'll move we approve the minutes.
All right, and I'll second that.
Crabtree.
Abstain.
Becker.
Yes.
Foster.
Yes.
Merck.
Yes.
Nicklin.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
Our Municipal Advisory Council Planning Commission Liaison Report. The next meeting is January 20th, and it's Commissioner Crabtree, that meeting. Disclosure of site visits and ex parte contacts.
Yes, I've visited both sites.
Yes, I've visited both sites. I've actually spoken to one of the applicants a couple of times, and I think Mr. Hilgers presented a concept to me individually a couple years ago now, isn't it? So other than that, he wanted me to see the concept and hear about the process of going through the Planning Commission.
I'm familiar with both sides, and I've also had conversations with Mr. Hilgers.
I visited both sites, and I had a similar kind of conversation about 3 years ago, I think, with Chet out at the site.
I've visited both sites and had communications with Mr. Hilgers.
I visited both sites, and I actually was the landscape architect for the Hilgers project, for the planting and the irrigation. And then I was also contacted by Mr. Hilgers in regards to the recycling center.
Thank you. So we'll move on to item number 2. It's conditional use permit, CUP 13-06, and design review permit, DRP 13-15, for placement and operation recycle center 214 Bryan Circle. Property owner Ann Adamson. The applicant is Luz Duran. This has been continued from the December 4th meeting, and turn it over to city staff, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. As Chair Nicklin said, the item is conditional use permit 1306 and design review 1315, a request to place and operate a recycling center at 214 Bryant Street. The applicant is Luz Duran. She is in attendance at tonight's meeting, and I'm sure would be happy to answer any project-specific questions that staff cannot answer during public comment period. So to move on to the project setting, the proposed project site at 214 Bryant Street totals approximately 1.6 acres. It's surrounded by typical industrial type uses such as storage and automotive repair. The applicant's proposed recycle center is proposed at the center of the project site. It's approximately 130 feet from Bryant Street, so setback from Bryant Street. They're proposing to utilize the existing driveway approach from Bryant Street and are proposing to include a gravel driveway and gravel circulation for the project site, with the exception of the accessible parking space they're required to have as paved with paved with asphalt. So the applicant is requesting to locate this recycling facility in the city, and that's based on the California Beverage Container Recycling and Litter Reduction Act, which does require a location within a 3-mile radius of a California, any store that sells California redemption value containers. So the applicant did have a location in Miners Oaks, and that location has since closed and is now requesting to locate the site in the city of Ojai. They're proposing to accept only CRV, which is California Redemption Value Recyclables, in 2 separate 200-square-foot steel cargo containers on site. One would be for glass and one would be for plastic and aluminum. They're proposing a separate trash receptacle that would be available for customers to dispose of non-recyclable items, so items that maybe a customer would bring that doesn't meet the requirements for CRV. And those that trash receptacle would be emptied by the recycling operator on a daily basis. The Uniform Building Code requires the placement of a bathroom facility on the project site. The applicant is proposing to use a portable bathroom for the first year of operation. And the proposed collection times would be Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Saturday from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. There are 3 types of recycling facilities that the city's municipal code allows. One would be a reverse vending machine, which is just that, a vending machine, and takes up little space and doesn't require parking spaces. Then there's the small collection facility and large collection facility, which both require parking spaces. They also both require approval of a conditional use permit for their operation. The small collection facility differs in that it can have a maximum of 350 square feet for the facility. And a large facility can be larger than 350 square feet. Originally, staff had analyzed the project to be a small collection facility. However, after further review, looking at the project, it does fit more closely with a large collection facility, and they do meet all of the requirements for that large collection facility. The large collection facility, as it states in our municipal code, is allowed with a conditional use permit only in an M1 or MPD zone, which is industrial. With a small collection facility, there's a requirement that the conditional use permit be reviewed after 1 year. With a large collection facility, they can have a maximum of 3 years before they can be reviewed again. But staff is proposing that although we feel that the project meets the large collection facility criteria, we would still like to impose the 1-year review of the conditional use permit. So requesting that the project come back to the Planning Commission after a year of operation to review the CUP. The applicant is requesting, in addition to the conditional use permit, approval of a minor design review permit, and that's for the design and layout of the proposed site and the accompanying structures. The existing wood fence along Bryant Street will remain, and it will remain open during business hours. The fire department, County of Ventura Fire Department, has required a Knox box installation on that gate for after hours when the gate is closed. And that's, we've required that in our conditions of approval. Going on to compatibility with general plan and zoning. As stated, the project site is located in the commercial manufacturing land use designation. And Land Use Policy 10 of the Ojai General Plan requires that new developments be at an appropriate density or intensity based on compatibility with the majority of existing surrounding uses. The proposed recycle center is surrounded by other industrial uses that are comparable in the intensity of use, such as the automotive repair, which is directly adjacent, and storage uses that surround the site. This proposed use of a recycling center wouldn't be any more intense than that of the Adamson Automotive to the north or Condor Self-Storage to the south. Intensity, when I'm talking about intensity of use, I'm talking about the noise that's generated from the proposed project, and anything else that's related to a recycling center wouldn't be any more intense than what you would get from the other uses that are surrounding the site, like the automotive repair. In addition to that, the project site is within the Bryant Industrial Area Plan, which the Bryant Industrial Area Plan is characterized by a mixture of industrial, office, outdoor storage, and manufacturing uses. And when the plan was adopted in 2005, vacant parcels were presumed to be developed consistent with the underlying commercial or industrial zoning. And this particular block, 200 block of Bryant Street, was assumed to develop into industrial uses consistent with the M1 zoning, with an emphasis on manufacturing and processing uses, which the proposed recycling center would be. The applicant, at staff's request, submitted a traffic study by Associated Transportation Engineers, and the study determined that the proposed project would not result in a significant increase in the traffic that's currently being generated by the property, and would not generate significant impacts to the roadways and intersections located in the city of Ojai. At the last meeting, December 4th, there was a comment from the public regarding the traffic study and asked that we take a look at traffic count or traffic that was generated by this particular use at the Ace Hardware site. So staff did contact the County of Ventura to find out if there was any traffic information related to the recycling center that was located at Ace Hardware. And they did not have any traffic count data. And it would be hard to go back and determine what that was when it was there. Environmental review for the project site. The project's exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act based on categorical exemption, the infill development projects. And I stated in the section of the report regarding the Bryant Industrial Area Plan, because this was a parcel that was identified in that plan, and that plan had an environmental impact report, which was a programmatic impact report. It includes any parcels that were, they might have been vacant but were presumed for an industrial type use, can be included in that infill categorical exemption. So that concludes staff's report of this project. I'm happy to answer any questions, and as I noted earlier, the applicant's in the audience, so if you have specific questions regarding the recycling center and how it operates, I'm sure she could answer those.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the Commission for staff?
I think I read somewhere it was mentioned that in 6 months' time, you were going to require the applicant to sit down with, is it Public Works or was it staff? Or?
It would, in 6 months, we're asking the applicant to sit down with the building department or the building official to discuss the options for the bathroom facility. So
the idea being that if once they come back at the end of the year and they continue with the business, that would be a requirement.
That's correct. And the code requires a permanent bathroom facility. However, you can have a permit for a portable bathroom facility for up to 1 year. So staff is requesting that they sit down with the building official to discuss options for that facility, because after a year they would have to begin the process of submitting plans for a permanent facility if that's what is decided upon. And that's also, I guess, dependent on the operation and how it's doing and the CUP, so.
Okay, thanks.
So Heather, it looks to me like they're going to have to come back a year from now with a new application, basically. Would we be looking at street improvements and things at that point as well?
Right. They wouldn't have to file a new application. We would just place them on the agenda for a review of their conditional use permit. But at that time, yes, we could look at if it looks like the operation is going to stay and it's feasible for them to stay and have this bathroom facility and all the other requirements, then we can take a look at other requirements such as street improvements or street trees or paving of the driveway.
Yeah, because at that point it would become a permanent facility. We'd probably go to a 3-year
Right.
renewal of the CUP and so on.
Right.
Yeah.
And actually, not to interrupt, but I did forget to mention the Public Works Department did submit some conditions on Friday evening that they would like included. So I have a copy of those conditions. So when we get to the point of what the motion is going to be, I can go over the wording for those conditions, but basically it's requiring a concrete apron to accommodate the roadside drainage, and requiring the applicant to submit plans for approval and an encroachment permit with the Public Works Department. The second item was to require maintenance of the driveway, and a third proposed condition was to comply with the NPDES requirements. So we can go over those when we get to that point.
Any other questions for staff from the Commission? I'd like to open up for public hearing, and maybe the applicant are there any questions for the applicant from the Commission?
Yeah, I have a few questions.
Yeah. Would you like to come up, please?
Hi,
Good evening.
good evening. I'm nervous. No, just only I have 17 years working in the recycling for help to the all customer get in the CRB. When you go to the store, you buy water, for example, and you have to pay 5 cents for each bottle. And then my proposal is I give the money to all customers. When you go to the store, you pay this money, and I give to back. And then I help I have 13 schools in Ventura. They collect the plastic and cans, and I get my truck and I go pick it up when the shelf is full. I will pick it up, and then I give the check back, and this money is for the school, for utilities for the kids, and then drapes, and I don't know. The school use the money for very good money for the school, and I have a 13 school in Ventura. And then when I'm close to minor socks, it's because I don't have a lot. Only have a 3 space for parking lot, and then I have to close when the store give me. I have to close. Okay, I'm closing, and everything is perfect. And I'm looking another more big place, maybe more space, because I have 200 customers. Really sad because I have to close. And then right now, 2 to my customers going to Ventura is too long. And then I think it's really, really good if I put the recycling to Bryan Street. I think all customers really, really happy. I don't know.
Thank you. Any questions?
Liz, I had a question.
Yes. Can you come back up, please?
So I was just wondering what happens when somebody brings in something. I'm thinking of like when you say, oh, it's a recycling center, I can see people like bringing their old TVs down or something like that. What do you do when somebody comes in with something that you can't actually recycle?
Okay. When for the TV, if there's some people give me bring the TV, I get and I go to the Harrison trash. Yeah, I bring the donation to the state, but I have to be really, really clean because I put one small sign. It's only CRV. I collect only CRV. Because the law right now, I have like new rules. It's like only I take it as CRV. When you go to the store, you pay CRV. I give your money back. That's it.
So you're primarily just the CRV. That's all you want to have people
Yes,
bring in.
only CRV.
Yeah.
Yes, it's for the market because it's a lot of market and liquors, and then all person pay the CRV and they don't have recycling back the money. The customer they have to go to Ventura or Oxnard or Sarikoy. It's too long way. Is the reason because I put it right here.
The question I had was related to the other, I know there's a state requirement that the grocery stores have a CRV return facility within a certain distance. Do the grocery stores pay you to have the facility?
For the
Like Vons and Star and some of the big stores?
Yeah, for the bonds, I have one in Santa Paula in the Tres Sierras Market, and then to the state, he support me and he give me the handy fee because I have a really, really good relation with the state. And then includes I have like the license for the state. It's already. I received like October 31, the license for the state because the state want to give the money back all person because if the recycling not give the money to the customers, the state get the money.
Did you approach Vons to have this recycling center at their location?
And these bonds, yeah, but I have the bonds is when I go to the city and ask it for the bonds, and then the city say no because it's too loud, or I don't know. This is not zoning, like a commercial zoning, and then the city say go to find the commercial zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to get up and talk about it? Thank you. Could you give your name and address, please?
I'm Kathleen Richards. I live in the city of Ojai. I have read the staff report, and I've also read the Article 15 Recycling Facilities Ordinance. And it seems to me that the staff report is failing to address a number of things that are in Article 15 about recycling facilities. And I'm wondering why that is. According to Article 15, a large collection facility, quote, shall have a permanent structure and shall be screened from all public rights of way within an enclosed structure and structure setbacks and landscape requirements shall comply with those provided for the M1 and MPD zoning districts, and outdoor storage shall be screened by a minimum 6-foot-high solid decorative masonry wall. None of those things are addressed in the staff report. This application, last time it was before you, was calling this facility a small storage or recycling facility. And then it was discovered that they couldn't call it that because it was on a different parcel. So then they switched it and called it a large recycling facility. But in fact, it doesn't meet the criteria for a large recycling facility. And the conditional use permit is allowing them to go forward without meeting any conditional use criteria. It's basically saying, why don't you show up here and try out this business for a while, and if it goes okay, then we'll talk to you later. But it doesn't even say in the staff report that they're going to talk to them later about the 6-foot-high decorative masonry wall or the landscaping. So what this looks like to me is that you're putting something on Bryant Circle that nobody else wants, and you're hoping that nobody will notice it, and it'll just kind of fade away from everybody's consciousness, and nobody will have to deal with it in the way that the rules say it should be dealt with. And I am not in favor of junking up Bryant Street. I think that the goal, the long-term goal of the city in looking at Bryant Street is to improve it, not to allow it to decline. And this doesn't do that. This is just putting something over there that nobody else wants and saying it doesn't have to meet the criteria, and we'll look at you in 6 months. But everybody in this town knows that in 6 months, if that thing is sitting there, nobody's going to want to address making it go away or making them have to spend money to build things that they don't want to build today. So I think they should be held to the standard now, before they are granted the conditional use permit. Other people are held to that standard. The next thing on your agenda has been held to that standard for months and months. And this is not being held to any standard, and I think there's a fairness issue here, and I think there is an issue of allowing Bryant Street to go into decline rather than be improved, as is supposedly the long-term goal of this community. So I would suggest you send this back and not approve it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else on the floor, please? Then I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Close the public hearing.
I'll second that we close the public hearing.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so discussion.
I wonder if staff could address that issue of small versus large recycling facilities. It sounds like it makes a big difference in terms of the state requirements.
Heather, would you like to address that issue with the small versus the large again? I know you did briefly touch on it in the beginning.
Sure. Originally, we had felt that it met the criteria of the small recycling facility, but after further reviewing the project, feel that it better is represented by the large facility. And I can address the issue of the permanent structure requirement if you'd like me to go further, or I can hold off on that.
Well,
I think
I'm more
we'd-
curious about.
Yeah, we'd
how-
like to hear it.
How did we come up with the? What's the difference between a small and a large facility? I mean, how do you determine that?
Well, the difference between the two facilities is that one is a maximum of 350 square feet, and the large facility can go beyond 350 square feet. And the project as proposed is 2 steel cargo containers, which are each 200 square feet. So that would total 400 square feet and is larger than 350. The other part of it too is that They are not accessory to any use on that project site. Currently, it's a salvage storage yard, and there's no recycling center wouldn't be accessory to that. So the large collection facility doesn't require them to be accessory to another use.
So at the old location in Miners Oaks, that they were kind of an accessory to the hardware store? Is that
Yeah,
right?
if they were proposing to be located, say at Star Market or Vaughn's, that would be accessory to that market. There's kind of a relationship there, but it's not the main use on the project site.
Thank you.
So that would refer to the same one that's down at Dowell's, for instance.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's an accessory use, yeah.
Could you also address the other two issues that were brought up? If this is indeed considered a large facility, the permanent structure and the landscaping, and then the 6-foot-high masonry wall that would be used as outdoor screening?
Sure. The permanent structure requirement is something that they would be required to do. As I noted in the staff report, they're required to have a permanent bathroom facility. But they can request to have the portable bathroom for up to 1 year. So because we're going to be reviewing, or we're proposing that we review this conditional use permit after 1 year, that we would hold off on requiring them to build a permanent bathroom facility until then. Because if we require them to do it now and the conditional use permit is reviewed in a year and decided that it doesn't work there, it doesn't fit there, they would have already built that permanent facility. So they are still required for a permanent structure. However, that is they're requesting as part of the CUP to have the portable bathroom for a year and then build the permanent structure.
So I guess in essence, the first year is kind of a trial. You're giving them a trial, letting them be there on a trial basis. In other words, if the business doesn't succeed, then they are planning to possibly close.
Yeah, that's part of it. The other part of it too is the applicant has secured a 1-year lease from the property owner. So, after, we don't know what will happen with that lease, and the applicant doesn't know whether that lease will continue or not. So to make all of these improvements, or to require the applicant to make all of these improvements without securing a longer lease, it'd be cost prohibitive.
Just on that note of permanent structure, so the actual for large, this is a larger collection recycling facility. The permanent structure only addresses the bathrooms, is that correct?
No, the permanent structure could be for, any structure. It's just that they are required to have a permanent bathroom facility. So we're counting that as the permanent structure.
So how does the code exactly worded on the requirement for a permanent structure? What are you reading? What does it say?
It requires a permanent structure. It doesn't specify whether it be bathroom facility or not.
Do you have that language?
I don't have the language.
I have the language.
Yeah, that sounds a little strange. I'd like to.
You could just give it to Heather, please. Thank you.
No.
To Heather. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, it isn't there.
Thank you, thank you.
I didn't mean to interrupt your questioning, but was a little unclear on that. Yeah.
On the same line that I was going.
Okay, so large collection facility. Let's see, the facility shall be screened from all public rights of way within what's it? Oh, a large collection facility that's larger than 350 square feet on a separate parcel, not accessory to a main use, and which shall have a permanent structure, shall comply with the following standards. The facility shall not be located adjacent to a residential use. The facility shall be screened from all public rights of way within an enclosed structure. And the structure, well, there's many of them. I can read them all, or I could just read the ones regarding the permanent structure.
I actually would like to hear all of them. If it's pages, let me know, but if it's, doable and we could hear what they are.
Okay. Okay, the structure, setbacks, and landscape requirements shall comply with those provided for the M1 and MPD zoning districts. Number 4, all exterior storage of material shall be in sturdy containers or enclosures which are covered, secured, and maintained in good condition at all times. The storage containers for flammable materials shall be constructed of non-flammable materials. Outdoor storage shall be screened by a minimum 6-foot-high solid decorative masonry wall. Storage excluding truck trailers shall not be visible above the height of the required wall. Number 5, the site shall be maintained clean, sanitary, and free of litter and any other undesirable materials. Loose debris shall be collected on a daily basis, and the site shall be secured from unauthorized entry and removal of materials when attendants are not present. Number 6, space shall be provided on site for 6 vehicles to circulate and to deposit recycling materials. Number 7, 4 parking spaces for employees plus 1 space for each commercial vehicle operated by the recycling facility shall be provided on site. Number 8, if the facility is located within 500 feet of any residential use, it shall not operate or be maintained or serviced between the hours of 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. Any containers provided for after-hours donation of recyclable materials shall be permanently located at least 50 feet from any residential zoning district or use. Number 10, donation areas shall be kept free of litter and any other desirable material, and the containers shall be clearly marked to identify the type of material that may be deposited. Number 11, signs shall be installed in compliance with Article 16 of this chapter, which is the signs chapter. Number 12, dust, fumes, odor, smoke, or vibration above ambient levels shall not be detectable from adjoining parcels. 13, the site shall maintain adequate refuse containers on site for the disposal of non-hazardous waste. Any entitlement issued in compliance with this article, except for the small collection facilities, shall have a maximum term of 3 years before entitlement renewal.
Could you read number 5 again? I think it was number 5.
The site shall be maintained clean, sanitary, and free of litter and any other undesirable materials.
No, it was the one regarding the wall. Maybe I got the number wrong.
Number 4 is all exterior storage of materials shall be in sturdy containers or enclosures which are covered, secured, and maintained in good conditions at all times. The storage containers for flammable materials shall be constructed of non-flammable materials. Outdoor storage shall be screened by a minimum 6-foot-high solid masonry wall.
And I also heard in there that the containers cannot extend above the exterior wall. Is that correct? Somewhere in that language?
Storage excluding truck trailers shall not be visible above the height of the required wall.
Did you say excluding truck
Yeah.
trailers? Which would be the roll-offs in this case?
Right.
I had one other question. Is there any residential use within 500 feet?
There, Whispering Oaks is adjacent to the project site. However, the proposed use is in the middle of this project site.
Okay.
So if this was, it's going to be up for review in a year, would it not make sense to have it as a small storage and then you don't have all this stuff to deal with?
I mean, that's easy to do, except that it's doesn't meet the 350 square foot requirement, but that I don't know if that can be handled through a conditional use permit.
If you're meaning to remove one of the trailers and that she only have the one trailer,
Yeah,
the
'cause they're gonna-
definition of the small is under 350 square feet.
Yeah.
So-
50 square feet of what, though?
Right.
I think it reads, or was the large? You read it at the start.
Yeah, the large collection facility, which is larger than 350 square feet.
I guess the planning commission can interpret that.
But yeah, the other part of it too is it being an accessory use.
Because there's nothing else on that property other than the storage.
Right.
So,
So I didn't see it, but it sounds like there's a masonry wall requirement. And all I saw was the wood fence. Is that right, or am I wrong on that?
Outdoor storage shall be screened by a minimum 6-foot high solid decorative masonry wall. So that would, I mean, yeah, I guess it's based on interpretation. I mean, they have outdoor storage on site already that's not, that's not screened by the masonry wall, and the proposed recycling facility, the materials would be stored within the cargo container, so it wouldn't be considered outdoor storage. They'd be enclosed.
Are you satisfied with the, as I think I heard one of the points was 6 vehicles? Is that just the facility has to be able to handle the coming and goings of 6 vehicles? It's not the parking, then the parking
Right.
is.
It's the circulation. So basically the queuing, if there was, they would have to, have enough room for 6 cars. to
Stack or
yeah.
off the roadway.
Right. And they do meet that requirement, but, and they meet the requirement for parking as well.
Okay.
So are they meeting the 4+1, which is what I heard? The space that's not designated next to the storage units, is that considered parking? Because the requirement's 4+1, I see the 4.
+1 if they have a commercial vehicle for the recycling center.
Okay. This, Heather, this line you have here on sheet 1.0, it's basically a aerial view.
Yes.
I see where someone has put the lines here for the entrance to the center, the parking spaces. And those lines just designate the operating area of the recycling center, is that correct?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of your question.
The area, if you look at that second aerial down below.
Yes.
There's these, I can see where this is a depiction, it looks like the operating area of the recycling center, is that correct? There's an index there for the number 7 and
Right, that's their driveway.
the driveway, and then it dog legs into the operating area,
Yes.
is that correct?
Right here? Yes.
Okay. None of those lines indicate a wall unless, or is that southerly line there in the corner, is there a wall there?
No.
Okay, so this is just a depiction of kind of what the area is that they would use to operate?
Yes.
And then the entire area, as I saw it, was surrounded by a wood fence,
Yeah.
correct, the yard?
Right.
Now, there's a ton of vehicles in that yard. Are those going to be removed, or just, what's going to happen?
And as far as I know, they're, you mean in the area of where they're proposing the recycling
Yeah, I
operation?
mean, is there a setback that we have?
It would be outside of where those vehicles are, just behind it.
But there's no designated curbing going in, or is there?
No.
There's no paving going in?
Yeah, there's paving for the accessible parking space.
parking stall number 1.
But there's no paving going, the Public Works, it sounds like they're having some sort of curb cut requirement there.
No, they're,
that's
The apron.
yeah, just the driveway apron off Bryant Street.
Okay, but there's not going to be any paving going in and out?
There's gravel. They're
Gravel.
proposing to
Just do gravel?
gravel.
The existing gravel?
No, they're proposing new gravel.
Okay, so that, can you go over exactly where we're going to see gravel, given that aerial view?
It would be number 7.
So that whole area there, from the back to the front, will be gravel.
Yes,
There'll be curb cut, and then there'll be an apron going across that curb cut, correct?
no. Oh, I'm sorry, onto Bryan Street?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry, yeah,
Okay, then it'll swing around and dogleg to the operating area,
yes.
and then those parking spaces will be,
One of them will
One of
be
them will be
paved with
paved.
asphalt.
and which one?
The one that has the striping next to it, well, number 1, which is the accessible space,
And the other ones will just be gravel,
yes.
okay? And then the containers themselves are going to sit on when you say gravel, I'm assuming a road base of some sort, correct? Road base?
I can ask the applicant.
We don't know,
They're proposing
just gravel?
gravel.
We may want to specify what they use there.
Okay, we
'cause
can
gravel-
add that as a
Gravel
condition.
can be bad.
Lots of different.
I would think there would be some requirements. First of all, they've got heavy vehicles going in, and then you do, even if you have a paved ADA access, someone or even somebody potentially is going to be accessing, whether they're in a wheelchair or walking on that gravel. So it needs to meet ADA specifications, and then it also needs to meet, say, almost like an emergency vehicle specification to be the load-bearing capacity. Would that information be coming to us later after this? In other words,
Yeah,
for
that
like a
would be-
design review permit? Where
Right.
we'd have more specifics? This is more the concept, is that?
No, this is a design review permit, but,
But-
yeah, in their building permit, and then any permits that they
Right.
are required by Public Works Department.
So, is that something that we as a planning commission needs to spec, or is that just something that would naturally come from the building department because it meets code as far as, capacity for load bearing and ADA?
Right, that's something the building, but the planning commission can specify in conditions if you'd like,
Yeah,
beyond,
Okay.
Then I think there was another question, or at least I had one. I think I heard it from from the speaker, was the landscape requirements. Can you go over? I had heard something about M1 landscape requirements.
Sure.
Maybe just reread it and then
Yeah,
explain it.
let's see. Where's the,
Section, but there's probably some in here also.
well, there was a requirement in here for the landscaping, though.
Landscape, structure
Oh,
setback
s-
lines.
Okay,
Is that it?
so that, yeah,
Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
oh, so the requirement is that structure setbacks, and landscape requirements shall comply with those provided for in the M1 and MPD zoning districts. And and I'm just looking at my report for the landscaping.
So I was just wondering if Commissioner Crabtree knows if they just have gravel there, is that going to comply with the state water runoff requirements and all that?
I think it would, the more stringent stormwater rules would have to do with covering the containers and making sure there's no runoff, rainwater going into the containers and then running off.
Thanks.
go ahead. Just one other comment, because we were talking about the fencing or screening earlier. It looks as though if you went along the access driveway into the recycling site, so that would be facing south and then also facing west. There's a symbol there for a fence line, but is that actually wood or is that some other material?
Well, they do have an existing wood fence that's on Bryant, and just behind that
Right,
is
that I'm aware of, yeah.
Oh, just behind that is an existing chain link fence, but the applicant isn't proposing
Any other interior?
additional.
Okay, I just noticed the symbol on there, and that must be, well, I can see there's two kind of parallel fencing, and those must be the chain link. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right, and that's existing.
Chair,
Move this one.
yes. I have another question, but are you still looking things up? We've talked a lot in the past about fences at the property line, and is the existing fence in compliance? It looks like a 6-foot wood fence at the property line.
Right. It's,
Is that in compliance with our ordinance on fencing?
I believe it's for industrial. I'd have to look that up. So if
Yeah,
you want-
go ahead.
Okay.
Meanwhile, overall, I think a recycling facility is great. I mean, Ojai wants to be green. You can't do that without recycling facilities. But also overall, I think the application and the site plan need to be tightened up. And in general, I'm not that very excited about doing a temporary, like if they need a permanent restroom facility, I'd like to see it when they go in. And as usual, I'm always concerned about the frontage, which is one of the reasons I'm asking about that fence. As you look at
Yeah.
the streetscape, it's challenging to have a nice looking streetscape with that. And I'd like to see, especially with more activity, and say the RV facility goes in and this facility goes in, we're going to see more pedestrians, more people parking on the street, more bicyclists. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see sidewalks and street trees there.
Yeah, I think, there's, all the other businesses have done a lot to clean up Ryan Street, and their future projects for the frontage is going to be cleaned up. And again, I think recycling is fantastic, but my feeling is if this is going to go ahead and it's going to be a large facility, it should stand by the code of installing it. That's my feeling.
I wanted to say that I'm 100% for the recycling also, but I am in agreement that, that we know that it's a large facility. I know we had our first presentation, it was small, considered a small one. It changes the parameters somewhat. And I do agree that adding improvements to Bryant is well needed, especially in that location. And then once again, there's that continuity or connection, which we're trying to promote throughout the city. But there's a really good chance that there will be people walking in off of Ojai Avenue to potentially bring things to the recycling center. So I tend to be more in agreement with complying with what's required for that large facility. And I'm not sure if you were looking this up or not. I know, Troy, I think it was you or Stephen had mentioned about the landscaping. And it would just be nice if you can find it, and if it's brief, if you could just read it out loud. I think it would just be beneficial for everyone to hear what that is.
The landscaping requirements, they are required to do landscaping. That would be part of their project.
And so what would that mean in the on zoning?
Okay, I can go back to that. I had just opened up to the fence issues, if I can go back to that. Okay, so the required front setback for the industrial zone is 10 feet. And in the fences, walls, and hedges, there's a maximum height of 3 feet in the front yard setback. So in answer to your question, no, they would not be in compliance with what's existing right now. But the applicant is not proposing any additional fencing.
Thank you.
So that would then make the issue of the wall at the back very important, the screening, if that's not in compliance.
It seems that as soon as you go to the larger size, it triggers a whole set of new parameters. I'm wondering, is it possible to downsize the containers? Because I know they make them in different sizes. You're talking 50 feet here, I think, 50 square feet, which is 5 by 10. It's negligible. I mean, when you look at it that way, but nonetheless, our ordinances are there for a reason. Is it possible, and I'll ask you, Luz, is it possible to downsize the size of the containers to make them conform to the square footage requirements for the smaller size recycling center? Do you know, would you have that information?
Could you come up to the dais, please?
There's for the containers, the size is like a 8 feet for 20.
8 by 20, right?
Yeah, this is small. This is for the cans and plastic, and another container is for the glass. This is too small, too small. And then I have the truck, and then I pick up the cans and later plastic. That's it, but the container is...
Right, so my question is it possible to get a smaller container that you're aware of that's smaller than 20 feet, shorter than 20 feet, that would bring you into compliance with the required square footages for our ordinance?
Yeah, sure. I have a small container, yeah, that's okay.
That would be for a small facility though, right?
Then it would, that's correct. It would go back to the original supposition of a smaller facility.
But I think it was asked earlier, what does that 350 square feet actually, because we don't have any measurements on our plans here. So does that include the driveway? Is that including all the parking spaces? What consists in that 350 square feet? Because maybe it's something else that could be reduced and the container size is fine. But do we have that information? Is that?
It doesn't specify. I think I just measured, the actual use itself, not including the, the parking areas.
Maybe we can kind of, I think we're, in some respects driving staff crazy. So maybe we can get by that for tonight. I think whether it's large or small, we've got a few issues that we need to address.
Mm-hmm.
We'd probably condition a small facility anyways. That's what I'm thinking. I think the concerns are pretty straightforward. We just need to have a better application. Let me go on the record first in saying I'm not against recycling centers. I'm for them. I'm actually one of your bigger customers. We bring stuff there quite often when it was in Miners Oaks because it was down the road. I think the issues are, one, making sure that we've got a complete application because there's some requirements. What struck me when I saw this was it seemed like we were missing a lot of things that we would otherwise require for someone going in the M1 zone. And having opened a few businesses and gone through what I like to call the nightmare of bureaucracy, I appreciate that we're going to do everything we can to make this thing happen, because we do need to have a recycling center here in Ojai. On the other hand, I think we need to make the center inviting so people see it and go, wow, that's really pretty. There's something in there, not just a bunch of cars laying around, which is, I got to be frank with you, that yard looks horrible right now. It is horrible, and it needs to be cleaned up. And those cars need to be moved away, and this recycling center needs to have its own space with at least some sort of setback. If there's not going to be a fence where I was talking about, there needs to be a setback that we know about so that no one stores their cars 5 feet from vehicles that are going to be going in and out of that yard. We just can't have that. People need to want to go in there. It needs to be easily accessible. I think it needs to be very clearly indicated as to where it is. One of the problems that we've had on Bryant Street, and we've talked about this for 10 years now, at least that's as long as I've been on here, is we're not going to let any improvements go into Bryant Street without saying curb and gutter. Mm-hmm. Correct? And this is a major exception, and I'm maybe okay with it if we just put some DG pass down or something that was okay for ADA. Maybe we could work with Public Works on that, come up with a nice entrance. I know you're concerned about this. I'm sure you are as a business owner, but the noise with the seniors behind these facilities could be a big problem. So I like the idea that you're doing a short-term thing just to kind of see how it goes over, because we could see a year from now a whole bunch of people coming in here saying we don't like the noise, which is exactly what would happen at Vaughn's, that we would get complaints about the noise. And so we get this not in my backyard mentality going. And the problem is we have to have a recycling center in Ojai. So if we don't put it here, I think as a group of planning commissioners and as a community, we need to find a place for you to put this that isn't going to cost you an arm and a leg, and it's going to make sense for the community. The other concern that I have, and I'm sure you have too, is a lot of your clients actually take the bus and they walk their stuff in. I know because I give a lot of my recycling away to people that are going to your center, and I'll just give it to them and they'll tote it over there. Mm-hmm. So having it that far away, you got to kind of judge whether that's going to work or not. And it could, but it may not. It may not. So I think those are things you got to consider. And I like the idea of giving it a try, and I think we should all support this somehow. But I just think the application, and maybe staff needs to kind of work a little bit more on beefing up the application, making it, not making a square peg fitting around hole so much. Maybe we can do a smaller center with some light improvements that maybe everyone here could be acceptable to, but we look at it again in a year. We also do have this neighboring project going on in, which is going to, if it goes through, there's going to be people potentially staying overnight within 500 feet of the center, and that could pose another problem. We need to consider that too. So I think these are things, staff is looking through the book there. The lady that got up and spoke, I think she had a lot of points. I just want to be comfortable. I think everyone does that we meet all the criteria for putting the center in before we approve it or even condition it.
I agree. I think we should continue this tonight and maybe have it come back with a more complete application.
So do we
I'm
make
in agreement too with that.
Do we make a motion to carry it over? So then
I'll move we continue this. But I don't think we have a date certain. It would just be can you guys give us a date?
I believe the date would be in February. We'll renotice.
Okay. So I move that we just continue this.
All right, I'll second that. If that was required. If the second was required, I did it.
Crabtree,
Yes.
Becker.
Yes.
Foster,
Yes.
Merck,
Yes.
Nicklin.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
We'll move on to item number 3, the design review permit, DRP 13-14, conditional use permit, CUP 13-05, and sign permit, S 13-27, for the development of a recreational vehicle park for the property located at 317 Bryan Street. The owner applicant, the Hilgers family. I'll turn it over to staff.
Yes, Chair and
Just one thing, I need to recuse myself, and it's probably the right time to do it. It's right now.
yes.
Right. So I'll do that. I actually worked on the project and did the planting and irrigation plan.
So, Chair and members of the Planning Commission, tonight is all about Bryant Street. So just across the street from 214 Bryant Street on the last item is 317 Bryant Street. The applicant is proposing or is requesting a design review permit, conditional use permit, and sign permit for the development and placement of a proposed recreational vehicle campground on the proposed property. The property owner and applicant is the Hilgers family, and they're in the audience tonight. So when we get to the point of questions, if you have more specific questions than I can answer, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer those. The project site is approximately 0.64 acres. It is surrounded by industrial type uses such as storage facilities, auto repair facilities. It's currently used as a contractor's service and storage yard and has an existing 1,200 square foot corrugated metal workshop and office building on the project site. The project site is also adjacent to the city's bike trail and a vacant parcel just to the south. The project proposes to utilize the entire site as a campground with the existing workshop and office building to remain. And the site is currently surrounded by a chain link fence along Bryant Street frontage and the interior of the project site as well. I'm sorry, the interior property lines of the project site as well. The applicant proposes to locate an 11-space RV campground as a resort destination for stays that would be limited to 14 consecutive days. The spaces for the RVs would range in size from 15 feet in width by 32 feet to 48 feet in length. The applicant's proposed rules and regulations would limit the type and size of the recreational vehicles allowed on site, as well as the maximum number of guests per RV camp space. The applicant is also proposing to place a repurposed water pumping windmill and 500-gallon water tank at the eastern corner of the project site, and that would be used to irrigate the site. And of course, they would obtain the proper permits from the Public Works Department to do so. Each of the 11 RV spaces would be provided with plumbing, electrical, and cable hookups for the RVs, so the RVs would not be running on generators at the site. And the applicant is providing a space at directly in front of each RV space that could park a smaller vehicle if it was being towed by the RV. As part of the RV campsite, the applicant is proposing to construct a corrugated metal building to house a bathroom with an ADA compliant shower and a mechanical enclosure. And I think I said in the staff report that they'd be separate structures, but the bathroom and mechanical enclosure are within one structure, and they are proposed adjacent to the existing corrugated metal structure on site and are proposed to match that material. The project site is proposed as a botanical garden landscape, and there's proposing approximately 10,500 square feet of the site with bend-a-board finger planters between each RV parking space. The remainder of the site would be covered by the building footprint and the proposed paving for the driveway, RV spaces, and accessible walking paths. They would use a combination of concrete for the 3 passenger vehicle spaces that are adjacent to the office, and the ADA walkways. They're also proposing decomposed granite for the sidewalk that's required along Bryant Street, and the crushed gravel paving for the RV spaces and drive aisle into the project site. As part of this proposal, they're requesting a sign permit, and that's for the installation of a painted metal 5 square foot sign that's raised 3 feet off the ground with attached 8-inch metal letters. The sign is proposed just outside the 10-foot front yard setback area at the corner of the drive approach. I do have a color and materials board that I can pass around to you to take a look at, which is the color and materials of the signs and the corrugated metal structure and the drive areas. Pertaining to the permits that are being requested, the applicant's requesting a conditional use permit because the proposed use, which is an RV campground located in an M1 industrial area, is not listed in the allowed or permitted use table. And section 10-2.303 of the city's municipal code has a section called allowable land uses and permit requirements, which states that if a proposed land use is not specifically listed in tables 2.2 to 2.8, which are the permitted use tables, that it should only be allowed if the Planning Commission can find that the use is not more objectionable or detrimental to the general welfare or more objectionable or detrimental to a particular area of the zoning district than the uses that are enumerated in the tables. And that would be through the granting of a conditional use permit. A campground use is listed in the city's municipal code in Table 2.6 as a use requiring conditional use permit in the open space zoning designation. Beyond that, the closest use that would be similar would be a mobile home park, which is permitted in the residential zones with approval of a conditional use permit. The allowed land use table 2.4 for commercial industrial zones does not list a campground or mobile home park, as those are not typical uses found in those zones. And that's for reasons of potential exposure to air and noise emissions and groundborne vibration typically experienced in commercial and industrial zones. In reviewing the project, staff looked at other uses in this section that were mentioned above, and while there are residential structures in the M1 zone, they have been there prior to the designation of the area as that zone. I think in 2011, the Planning Commission approved the modification of the Wild Tennis Academy on Bryant Circle, which was a proposed residential dormitory use in the M1 zone. However, the applicant requested a zone change to PL to comply with the proposed use. The applicant is requesting a design review permit, and that's for the construction of the 137 square foot restroom and mechanical room. The applicant is proposing, as I mentioned before, a corrugated metal structure which would match the existing structure on site, so it is compatible with the existing structure on site. The proposed ADA compliant bathroom and mechanical structure wouldn't be more than 11 feet in height and would be attached to the west elevation of the existing building. In addition to the structures, the bathroom structure and the mechanical enclosure, the applicant is proposing a working 37-foot high windmill and 20-foot high water tank that would be located along Bryant Street. The windmill will pump water from a shallow well and fill a 500-foot gallon water tank, and that's proposed for use as irrigation on the project site. And the applicant would need to obtain the proper permits for the well. The proposed height of the structures, with the exception of the windmill, meet the zoning code's property development standards. The M1 zone allows for a maximum height of 35 feet measured from the existing grade. The windmill is proposed at 37 feet, but because the applicant is requesting conditional use permit, that 2-foot difference is requested as part of the conditional use permit. They're requesting a height increase. As I stated, the applicant's proposing to provide utility hookups at each of the RV spaces, and that would include water, sewer, electrical, and cable. And that's all as required in the city zoning code section, and are proposed to be underground. The applicant is proposing to landscape the site with a botanical garden setting, which will meet the purpose of the city zoning code requirements for landscaping. Because the proposed RV campground is in the M1 industrial zone, it would be surrounded by light industrial uses, and hopefully the proposed landscape would help to buffer some of the noise, vibration, and fumes that are related to such industrial uses from their proposed guests or occupants at the site. Let's see. The applicant meets the requirements for the requested sign permit, and they would just need to come back for any additional signage that they want at the project site in the future. In terms of general plan compatibility and zoning consistency, as mentioned, the zone is M1 industrial, and typical uses include light manufacturing, commercial sales, and services. The proposed RV campground is not comparable in the intensity of uses. It is not more intense than the surrounding uses. And also, as stated, there are residential uses in the M1 zone, but they were there prior to the current zoning designation, making them protected in terms of being grandfathered. Land use policy 10 requires adequate buffering and transition be provided between dissimilar uses, and the proposed project includes landscaping of the site in a botanic garden setting, so that'll help to buffer it from the industrial uses. Land use policy LU3 of the general plan states to maintain an inventory of land uses that provides diverse economic, social, and cultural opportunities, and reinforces the characteristics that make Ojai a desirable place to live, and integrates complementary land uses in a manner which minimizes vehicle miles traveled within the community. The proposed RV campground would integrate a residential use into an area that does not typically permit residential uses. However, the adjacency to the city's bike path would give visitors the opportunity to see the city on bike and minimize the use of vehicles within the community. As stated earlier, the applicant's requesting the conditional use permit under section 10-2.303, which is allowable land uses and permit requirements. The applicant submitted a traffic study. Associated Transportation Engineers was hired by the applicant to provide that study. The study evaluated the project based on the City of Ojai and Ventura County thresholds, and determined that the project would not result in a significant increase in traffic currently being generated by the property, and would not generate significant impacts to the roadways or intersections. Staff did circulate a draft initial study, negative declaration, and excuse me, a notice of intent to adopt a negative declaration for the project. It was noticed for availability on November 27th, and the close of the public comment period is tonight's meeting. There were no significant impacts that were identified as part of that negative declaration. Staff has proposed several conditions as part of the resolution. The applicant has had a chance to review those conditions, but if there's any questions that, unless there's any questions, that would conclude staff's presentation.
Thank you. The commission have any questions for staff?
Heather, you briefly mentioned that they would like to change the zoning to PL.
No, I was going over other residential uses in the M1 zone, and in 2011, the Planning Commission approved the Wild Tennis Academy addition.
Oh, it's a whole separate thing.
Yeah, they're separate. I was just noting that they're residential use, but they requested a zone change to PL.
Yeah, but this one doesn't.
No, this one
is
is
just
not.
M1.
Mm-mm.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Steve? Troy, you have any? Paul, I think. I would like to open up to the public and the applicant. Would you like to come up, please?
I like recycling. Let me just say, first of all, thank you to staff, to Heather and Ann, and certainly the prior planning director and Katrina, first starting on this. We've been working on this for a number of years, and I think there's been so much thought put into this over the years. It's culminated in a really great project that everyone would be happy with, and we've addressed many things over the years, and I think that's going to add to the success of this project. Much like the skate park, you know, of course we took years to work on that. It's been very successful. And really the same approach has been taken here. We've talked to so many different people operating so many different places, and Ojai is a really unique situation. And I respect that, and we were very careful in considering everything that goes into this project to make it successful and to make it a great place to go to make it a destination spot. So if you have any questions for me, I'll certainly try and answer them.
Have you got any feedback from neighboring businesses or any kind of feedback about, you know, the purpose?
It's all been positive, and the people that I've gotten feedback from are the people directly around the project that live around the project. For instance, to the west of us, there's 2 people living on that property. Well, 3 people actually, and they think it's great. And they actually, they're probably going to be happier not hearing my welder and welding or grinding there. But the industrial uses that are around us are storage for the most part. And there's vacant land to the south of us with Denise's property. And the main thing about this project is we're not changing the zoning, like you said, John. It's a landscape job. We're adding a standalone bathroom, we're adding a shower, and that's it. It's really landscaping and utilities. So it could revert back to an industrial use at any time. So having said that, it's very low impact on the land. Everything is permeable, notwithstanding the ADA access that goes to the bike trail. And it's something that's going to, in my opinion, it's going to add to that part of town, to that part of the street. And the coming and going, if you read in the traffic report, the coming and going now usually happens during peak traffic time, which is in the morning and in the afternoon. And people would come and go during the middle of the day when there's very little traffic on that street. So I have heard no negative feedback from anyone on this project.
Do you have a question, Paul?
I do. What do you plan on doing with the existing storage building?
The existing storage building is going to remain that for now. It's going to have some tools in it, certainly to maintain the property. There's an existing office in there now, which Melanie, my wife, uses, which will remain. And as far as that, it's we don't have any planned use for the interior of the building. So the building will remain. We want to use it as a feature. The building has been there since the turn of the century. It's almost 100 years old now. And if you notice, if you look at the building, they actually painted Ojai on the top of the building, so when you fly over in your biplane, you know where you are. So we're expecting to repaint that on the top of the building, so that'll be a feature. We want to keep the building.
How about the exterior?
The exterior of the building will be cleaned and painted. And the paint scheme we came up with after looking at many train buildings or buildings that were along the train tracks at that time. Actually, looking at Yvonne Chenard's building down at Patagonia, they have an old train building down there as well, and they came up with a paint scheme which we like very much. And it kind of fits the motif of what we're doing.
This was the end of the line of the train, and it was a above-ground diesel fueling stop. I mean, that's where they would refuel the train, correct?
No, at that time, it was, originally it was Doheny, and then it was Standard Oil of California, and they would bring product up to that site to sell and distribute from there, along with there were different oil purveyors in around that area. There was, I think, down the street, there was Shell, there was Seaside above us, and another one down the street. But the main reason the train came to that site was to get to the packing house, which was across the street.
Just a clarification then, the site plan shows your right-of-way or your front lot line. It looks like just a few feet off from the building corner at the southeast. So that's about at the edge of the existing paving?
Protrudes into the right-of-way, you're thinking?
No, I'm just, it's not clear where the existing paving is in relation to the right-of-way and how wide the right-of-way is.
I'm not sure, Paul. The existing paving. I'm not sure.
The existing
The
edge
existing-
paving of the street?
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Where that is now and where the proposed curb and gutter is going to be?
No, in relation to your property line. In other words, we don't have a topography map that shows existing conditions, and I was just wondering if you could clarify that.
Well, if you had a scale, you could go 40 feet from the other side of the street, and that's where the new curb and gutter is going to go. And basically, we're going to go with a curb and gutter there, and then our sidewalk, and then landscaping begins from there.
Okay. Thank you.
So most of the ground we're going to cover, again, notwithstanding the concrete for ADA, is going to be permeable.
Right.
We're increasing the permeable surface.
Chet, I like the gravel, but it's not the standard gravel I'm used to seeing. It looks almost volcanic because of its color. Has it been treated or?
No, it's a black granite.
Okay.
And so the color is really chosen because of the volcanic look. It sets off all the shrubbery and greenery.
Mm-hmm.
So the size of the gravel may seem coarse to something like decomposed granite or a pea gravel, and that's on purpose, because after much research as well, you want a little bit heavier gravel, so when you step on that, you don't track it into your RV or somewhere else, so it doesn't stick on your shoe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reason for that. And what we'll do, we have a vibrating plate, and we'll go around and make the gravel flat, so it's easy to work on, or walk on, excuse me.
Well, it looks great, and there's function behind it too, so there you go. Was public art ever brought up to you? Is that the windmill, or what's the thinking behind that?
Well, you know, we did talk about that, and it doesn't meet the threshold because of price, because of cost.
The value of the
Right.
improvement to the
Right.
property? Okay, great. And what about lighting the facility, just the general lighting around the, you know, the spaces, that sort of thing?
Lighting,
I
we-
saw a couple things, but I didn't see anything.
We want to
really-
keep very minimum, of course, because we want it to be dark. Because if you go down there at night and you're standing there at night, it's amazing.
So you
look
think
up in
more
the
like
sky.
Bollard type of lighting? around the
Actually,
units,
they're
or
just, they should be on the plan, small LED landscape lighting, just pathway
just
lights.
within the planters, that sort of thing?
Yeah, just
and
at the
pathway
front of each space,
Okay,
and then everything is shrouded. There's only a couple of lights on the building,
right.
so very minimal, and that's the idea. We want
I
to
like
keep it
the
dark.
DG sidewalk. It's good to see one of those go in. And I don't know if it was, I guess it was conditioned that you're responsible to keep that and maintain that.
Sure,
Because
and-
of its deteriorating
and-
qualities, correct?
And Greg was concerned about that, and rightfully so. Is that going to be another thing for him to take care of? And I said, no, you know, it's our place. We want it to look good.
Uh-huh.
So we're going to be responsible for that. that's fine.
Well, it's done real creatively. I love the landscape. Looks like it's going to be. I'm waiting to hear from Lawrence, but it looks good to me.
Very fun. Yeah,
Excited about it.
Kathy really had a lot of fun with it.
But I guess it's not an apprehension really. It's just a realization that the fact that this is going in, and as you know well, in a light industrial area that's designated for that use, and if down the line the Mayflower building becomes another auto shop or something like that, there could be noise ramifications. I guess you're prepared to deal with those eventualities.
That's the nature of the zoning, and that's a risk we take.
That's right.
It's the way it goes.
Okay.
Well, I think, all the avenues of planning, I know it's been going on for a long time, and I think everything has been totally well researched, and all the plans look really thoroughly done. As far as the landscape's concerned, I think it's going to be a little central park in the middle of an industrial area. It's been very well thought out, and it's going to be this little green lung that's going to hopefully inspire other owners around the area, particularly over the road, which we were discussing previously, to do so.
And that's another thing that I can't tell you how many days I've been at the yard when people ride down on their bicycle, and I'll tell you, an inordinate amount of people on bikes from the mob shop. So we're planning on having bikes either from the mob shop or buy them from them to have on hand for people. But how many people can come, they'll be able to ride down the bike trail and come in and walk around and look at the plants and look and see what we have. Because there'll be some unusual plants that you will not see in this area that would be really fun. So, very exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one speaker card, Denise Wiseman.
Denise Wiseman.
Yes, please.
My question was, I'm Denise Wiseman. I live at 10075 Ojai Santa Paula Road in Upper Ojai. My question was the length of the stay of each guest. How long was the maximum days that they would be allowed to stay? Because there was a problem with Camp Comfort where people stayed for months and months. So who's going to supervise that, and who's going to be there to greet people when they come, and who's going to control the noise and the traffic? I want to wish good luck to the Hilgers family for all their planning and all their work. Oh my God, and there's no guarantee that they'll be making any money, after all the expenses and planning, and it's amazing. I wish them the best of luck, really. So my question is,
Thank you.
the length of stay and the quality of the people who are going to come there. And, thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we could ask Chet, you could come up and just answer those questions, please. The first one was the length of stay.
Length of stay, limited to 14 days. And you can stay for up to 14 days. You have to leave for a 72-hour period. And who will be policing that? And that will be us, our family. And we will be there every day. Somebody, or a number of us will be there every day. And there's a whole list of rules on the plans there, and those were very carefully researched to make it an inviting, nice experience for every guest that is there, and to protect the guests that are there from people who might get put on the naughty list. And so we want it to be a really nice place, and we want others to tell people that it's a fantastic place to come to. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the floor who'd like to come up and say something? No? Then
I'll move the public hearing be closed.
I'll second that. Aye.
Aye.
So, any discussion?
Okay, yeah, I like the plan. I think it's a nice addition to the city, and Couple of things, though. I gotta tell you, I hate the trash enclosure at the front of the building, on the street. I just couldn't go for that at all. I'd like the idea of dressing up the building. And then back to the question about the right-of-way is as I measured off on the plans, it's shown the curb at 20 feet from the center line, and then it shows that is the property line, and that doesn't. And then the sidewalk on the private side. So it's not real clear which is the public right-of-way and which isn't. I think I have a question about it, put it that way.
Troy, do you have anything you'd like to comment on?
No. I actually was looking at that. It'd be interesting. Does staff know where the right-of-way begins there or not?
I think that the existing issue, it's an existing issue where the right-of-way comes right up to the property line. So the sidewalk has to taper off. Yeah. By the trash enclosure, is that where we're speaking?
No, and I kind of recalled that there was an issue all along that west side of Bryant Street, and maybe I'm wrong, but there was something unusual with that. I'm thinking back to something else that was going along there. It's what it looks like is that it actually looks like there's no public right-of-way really right here, is what it looks like.
That it's a 40-foot
Yeah.
right-of-way?
Either that or it's not depicted right. Either way, I mean, there's going to be from what you've got here, basically a sidewalk going on the full length of the thing. It gets a little tight where that corner is on the building, I understand. We certainly wouldn't want to move that building.
Yeah, I'm thinking either there's a mistake and it needs to be clarified, or the right-of-way, there should be a right-of-way dedication for the public walk.
And maybe we want to make sure that gets done down the line. Other than that, it's amazing to me, this is probably the first time that I've been here that plans with elevations would have done no good on two projects. So it's just kind of, great planting and landscape. That's essentially what you're doing, and hopefully you bring in the business to make it successful. I think it'll be a good, I know Camp Comfort does quite well. I drive by it several times a day, especially on the weekends. Those bays are loaded there. So I think it is something we need in the community. We might even need more of these, and hopefully it'll bring more people downtown, and I wish you the best of luck with it.
Steve, do you have any comments?
I'm just wondering how to deal with the trash situation. I mean, I thought the same thing, but I didn't see any solutions. I'm wondering, Paul, do you have any ideas about that, or is it just a general feeling that you have?
You can discuss that.
I haven't really, looked at that, only that it does not belong there in any case.
If staff could interject, this was one of the issues that staff brought to the applicant at the project submittal. Staff does not like the trash enclosure on the street either, and requested that the applicant move the trash enclosure back towards the bathroom and mechanical enclosure structure away from Bryant Street, but that it still be accessible to any trash trucks coming to pick it up.
I presume it would be one of those small dumpsters that would be in the trash enclosure, the wheel out ones. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the only thing that we see here, Paul, is maybe on the west side of that last parking spot. Did you consider that? Yeah, good. It's okay, we could temporarily open the public hearing for the applicant to respond.
The reason we did that, and then looking at a couple of issues, number one, not wanting to have a garbage truck drive inside and pick up a trash can inside. The other one was we wanted to have that out towards the street, so if you're carrying anything out, open the lid and throw it in. That's happening there. And we kind of modeled that after a couple of them that I like. One of them is at Los Arbolos, which is right on the sidewalk. And then another one is at the corner of Bristol and Ojai Avenue, this old Seville building, the two-story office building there. And they have a beautiful kind of industrial-looking trash enclosure with a corrugated metal top, and it's all being covered with vines now. And that's the idea. Basically, that trash enclosure would not be recognizable in about 2 years. It would be covered with vine. So that's our idea with that. It really, to put it anywhere in the interior would really, it's kind of like putting the garbage collection point in the middle of the botanical garden. So that's
Is
the
the
thought on
depth
that.
of that drive there gauged to, so the truck could pull completely off the street, open up the doors?
What they would do is similar to the Oaks. Oaks has their trash enclosure near the street, and the truck pulls up and they wheel it out to the street and then lift it up. Same with the one at Los Arbolos. So that was the idea with that, and that happens, infrequently. And we're not anticipating a huge garbage load, but the idea was to keep the garbage truck out of the garden.
Thank you. Well, comments that I have, I think, other than the issue with the trash, that is a good point. But I think, as Chet said, it's keeping a large enough vehicle out of the area. And I think maybe, you've got people there with small children running around too. It could pose a problem with the trash truck going in and out. It's only once a week, but other than that, I think, it's a great facility for us downtown. It's something we've needed. People have either stayed at Lake Casitas or Camp Comfort, where they can actually, ride into town if they on their bicycles, even walk into town on the bike track. Or, I think it's something our city has really needed for a long time, and brings a different kind of person into town too. I like that the length of stay is limited to 14 days. It takes away that long stay. And it sounds like the overall management has been well thought out too. The day-to-day running.
Well, back to the trash. These are RVs. They're big vehicles going in and out. I'm not, it's like a trash truck would have, a lot of ease in getting in and out. And the fact that we don't want trash in the botanical garden versus, as a planning commissioner, I feel responsible for the public realm, and we don't want trash right at the sidewalk. And, that's my only concern with this otherwise stellar project.
Could we condition it that something is done with the trash? Is it a consideration then? I personally don't have any problem with it. It's my feeling. I hear what you say, Paul. But so, gentlemen, where do we want to go from here? Chet, could I just ask you to come back up to the dais, please?
I'll take the trash to my house.
Obviously you've done a lot of research and,
Sure.
and looked at. Are there any other sites that you have looked at that you've considered other than where it is right now?
Well, see, the issue always comes back to we're going to have guests staying in the interior. Mm-hmm. So when you're there, you're in this garden setting that's tranquil and peaceful, and we didn't want the noise of the truck coming in, if somebody's sleeping or walking around, like you say. That was the best solution to keep it there. So if somebody has small trash, or we go around and pick up trash for them, can bring it to that location and put it in the can there. And then when the truck comes, they can come and get it without disturbing anybody inside.
Mm-hmm.
To put it anywhere else, we're taking landscaping away that's screening the outside world, so to speak. So that really, I know it's not ideal, but it's similar to other projects in town that are working well. And like I say, as far as from an eyesore standpoint, certainly we hope that there will be nothing considered an eyesore at this project. This will be an example. This will be our example trash enclosure for the city of Ojai. So it'll be fully screened and look good and not smell. And when the guys dig through it for the recycling center, it'll look very nice.
Now, Chet, you mentioned plants, we're looking for an elevation of it right now. Is there a front elevation of this trash enclosure? And
there should be.
Plan? Okay. So you mentioned plants, trellis or something.
Steve, how a vine grows on something, kind of clings on, kind of like, what is it, the Cafe Emporium coffee shop in the front? Or the arcade, the corner of Signal.
Vines up the wall type thing?
Yeah.
But you got corrugated metal here, so it's a little...
Correct.
I think you would have to introduce some trellis type of thing.
We can get plenty of things that'll just stick right on there.
Yeah. I think that, I guess my take on it is that if we could camouflage this thing.
Absolutely.
With a trellis coming out the front, vines growing over, hanging down, so it disappears.
Yep. That's the idea.
I'd probably be okay with it. It's not the best solution.
With swinging doors.
Well, obviously you would maybe come out with, you have room in front of this on the floor.
And, the vines can grow on the swinging doors. If you look at the vine growing on the trash enclosure at Fresh Grill, it's starting to cover the whole thing now.
Right. And I don't even know if you could really get it to grow on the doors, but I don't think you could. But it'd be more like a trellis projection coming out the front, maybe 4 to 6 feet. Some side walls where vines could come up and hang and just kind of shrouded in there more than anything, rather than just looking at an exposed metal shed, because that's what it looks like in plan view, which is pretty, a little disconcerting in terms of the aesthetics of it. And what you do around it as well is important too. And I don't know, how did that get addressed in the landscape plan? Have that there? So it's, you get the walkway coming through here. And if you put the just thinking out loud.
Sure.
Folks, but if you moved it over here, there's a tree here that would have to be replaced or relocated. Not that that couldn't be done, but I don't see a real clean solution to this. I don't know.
We can definitely put up something like they do on some buildings and parking structures. They'll coat the whole side of it with piano wire to grow vines on it. I mean, we could certainly do something like that. That's a form of a trellis, and it would disappear. It would just be a big green blob. Flowery
I
one.
think I'd be up for something like that in conjunction with a trellis and
Sure.
just, like I say, you know, make it disappear into.
Absolutely. And we want to do that.
Foliage.
We want to do that. We want it to be fantastic.
Is that driveway approaching it, is that concrete or is that?
Yes. Yeah, and speaking with Larry at Building and Safety, we have an ADA space which is connected with concrete all the way to the bike trail.
Okay. I mean, I'd be willing to listen to other alternatives.
I just think
Thank you.
I think trash enclosure is going to,
Thank you.
thanks, Chad. I think it's going to blend into the building because it's going to be corrugated iron. And I think we have a lot of precedents around town for having trash enclosures out there. I know it's less than ideal, but I don't really have a problem with it in this location. I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of the way they're using the property.
I think if it's sufficiently screened and as you were saying, Steve, it could blend in and it should go away then. So,
I'm not trying to be difficult here, but I think it's an important point, and it's not only visual. If we want to get to the underlying situation, it's that people, both RV park users and others, will be using that. And both for deposits and withdrawals. And having it right there at the street just invites that sort of thing.
so should we?
No, really.
I'm ready to make a motion to approve this because it seems like a fairly minor thing to me. I think overall, it's a really great project. I'd really like to commend the Hilgers again for their patience with this whole process and really sort of seeing everything through. So I'm ready to make a motion that we adopt negative deck ND 1301 and adopt PC Resolution 13-20 and approve design review permit DRP 13-14 and conditional use permit CUP 1305 and sign permit S 13-27 subject to the findings and conditions of approval. And I don't think we have any changes to the conditions either. So
Well, I think there may be a change or two if we proceed with the trash closure in its current location, in that we would require the screening of plant life and a trellis.
I'd be open to that if we're willing to do that, yeah.
Add that as a condition.
Sure.
Yeah, I would go with that too.
All right.
I'll second that.
Any more discussion?
So just for point of discussion, I don't know how you're going to screen it. So that's a concern. And just to qualify my upcoming no vote, it's that I like the rest of the project, and I think something could be done about that issue.
Yeah, I don't think the screening really is necessary. I think Paul's objection has less to do with the screening than it does that it's just in the public right away, right beside it. Although I don't want to speak on your behalf, I think that's the major thing. The enclosure itself actually looks pretty good. It's going to match the building. I agree with John's comments, I think. And the wood, on the top, I think it'll look fine. So I really think aesthetically, it's going to look good. I don't think you need to do much as far as the plantings and stuff. So it's not a deal breaker to me if you want to keep the motion that way. It's, we're in an M1 zone. I understand where Paul's coming from. I don't see a really terrific location for it without sacrificing one of your spots there. Part of it's just that that building is situated so close to the right-of-way as well. And you got to hug that thing around the building no matter what if you don't want a truck coming in there. So I get it. But it's not a deal breaker to me. I think it's a great project. I agree with Paul. It's a very nicely done.
Ready for roll call? Crabtree?
Staff needs clarification as to the motion. Are we including screening and trellis, or are we not?
Yes, we are including screening.
Okay.
Yes.
And one member
We're not
of the
specific
Planning
about it.
Commission to review that as it comes in for plan check?
Sure, we could do that.
Thank you.
Crabtree?
No.
Becker?
Yes.
Foster?
Yes.
Merck?
Yes.
Nicklin?
Yes.
Motion passes.
It's something to be aware of.
Yeah. Could you let Commissioner Nolan, we're ready for the next item? So we'll move on to item number 4. It's a text amendment, TA 13-03 of the Ojai Municipal Code, amending section 10-2.404 and section 10-2.3003 of the city's zoning ordinance regarding residential building heights and adding section 10-2.405 establishing a solar access height limitation. I'll turn it over to Rob Clark.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the Commission. The presentation tonight will deal primarily with the solar access height limit. We've had several discussions of the general height limit here, and the City Council ultimately did introduce an ordinance in October. And then when it came back for second reading, the issue of a solar access height limit similar to what is done in the city of Santa Barbara came up. And the City Council referred the ordinance back to you to take a look at that idea. So we have incorporated language in the proposed ordinance that's almost identical to what the city of Santa Barbara has in their ordinance. We've also included in your packet the city of Santa Barbara solar access packet, which not only has their ordinance but also has their guidelines and other information about the program. And then Commissioner Becker, Ann and I did go to Santa Barbara and spend a little time with their staff getting an explanation and a demonstration as to how this works. I think the best place to start is in attachment C on page 4 of the Santa Barbara materials. And that particular page has 4 diagrams that describe how the solar height access, or the solar height limit works. And basically, you're looking at a property, you're looking towards the east. So if you were standing on a north-south facing street facing east, the northerly property line would be on the left. And what this ordinance does is it establishes a base height. And the base is the location where ground elevation meets the structure closest to the northerly height limit. So the base height doesn't necessarily start at the lowest point of the building. It starts where the building meets the grade. And then you take that point and you extend it out to the property line. And again, this is at the closest point to the northerly property line. And then you measure up, in most residential zones, 12 feet, but in the multi-family residential zones, you measure up 18 feet. So you measure up 12 feet, and then you come back at a 30-degree angle, up and back at a 30-degree angle. And so that creates an envelope over really it's the south side of the house, the north side of the house. And you can't penetrate that under normal circumstances. So that part's pretty simple. This generally will not have much impact on single-story buildings, but on two-story buildings, it will require that second stories be stepped back in many situations, depending on where the building is located in relationship to the property line. The city of Santa Barbara, in addition to having this very strict limitation, has a modification process. And the modification process is included in the rules and regulations. And so we've included language in the ordinance that indicates that we would develop rules and regulations and have a modification process as well. The modification process allows an applicant to do shadow studies. And the shadow studies, in one situation, is where you're adding a second story to an existing building. You don't have much control over where the building's located, and so you can add a second story if you can demonstrate through shadow studies that you're not impacting the solar panels or the windows of the adjacent property. They don't have a modification process for uphill buildings. So if your neighboring building is uphill, they might actually be above where a shadow would fall. But that's something that certainly could be added here in the city of Ojai. Let's see. So the other thing that we're proposing that's a little bit different than Santa Barbara is we're actually proposing an exemption for single-story buildings where the base height is less than 15 feet. And the thinking there is that since this generally is not going to impact those buildings, there's no point in including them and then having them go through this measurement and having all these properties that are potentially affected by something which really probably are not affected by it. We're very fortunate in Ojai in that we're on a grid that's north-south, and Santa Barbara is on a grid that's diagonal. And so they have situations where you can have two northerly property lines. And so there's a formula as to how you decide whether something's a northerly property line or not. But in the case of a diagonal property, you'd have to perform this analysis from both property lines. So that's generally what's being proposed. I was reluctant to send notices out to everybody who owns a residential property before first having a discussion with the commission, because I didn't want to unduly alarm people if, in fact, you're going to make changes to this before we consider it further. But I do think that a change of this magnitude should have more thorough public outreach than you would normally have just through noticing and newspaper publications and so forth. And probably a letter to everybody with a residential property is indicated in this case. And there are both pros and cons. Your solar access is protected, that's a pro, but your ability to potentially build a two-story building that blocks your neighbor's solar access is restricted. So I think it cuts both ways, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of public input you get. So my suggestion would be, number one, raise whatever questions you have, and number two, whatever suggestions you have to work with this, and then talk about what kind of public notice we should have before you actually make a recommendation to the city council.
Thank you. Any questions from the Commission for staff?
I'd just like to kind of add to Rob's comments, because I went up to the Santa Barbara meeting. One of the reasons that I don't think you mentioned it was behind having the ours 15 foot is because if you just do a blanket ordinance and every time a plan gets submitted, someone's going to have to do the solar calculation on their plans when we know it's not going to apply, particularly in the majority of the city, it wouldn't apply. So why make someone spend that money and go through that, which I think he said it's probably somewhere between $1,200 and $2,000 to get that done by your architect. There's additional time involved, and that's if they have the calculator on their software, which most architects do. Some will have to add that to it. So that was one of the reasons that we talked about instead of doing the 12, doing the 15, and just those people don't have to do anything. It saves us staff time. It saves money. It just saves all the way around. This should only apply where it should apply, which is essentially, for the most part, are going to be two-story buildings in Ojai with a northerly shadow that might be cast by either the addition or the building of a new home.
Something that I found I was a bit surprised about and found pretty interesting about this is that it prevents solar access encroachment, but it doesn't encourage solar implementation.
Mm-hmm.
If the ideal pitch for a solar PV, and what the standard for it is whatever your latitude is, and that equates to an 8/12 pitch. And you can't build a single-story building with an 8/12 pitch that's shorter than that. That's a 25-foot building. Yes.
Yeah, but you have to do the calculation going back from, it depends on how large the lot is and the setback of the structure.
I'm just saying, we have this, for a single-story residential building in excess of 20 feet, you have to go, it takes extra work instead of encouraging an 8/12 pitch. So that we can get more solar panels and be a greener Ojai. We're making it more difficult if you go over 20 feet. Or am I reading that wrong?
You're reading it right. It's funny, it's the way this ordinance developed. Originally, there was a concern about the height limit in general and not solar access. And so the commission recommended design review for buildings over 20 feet based on that concern. And then the solar access came, but that 20-foot requirement is still there.
Right.
So, I guess it's open for further discussion.
And by the way, then to go to a two-story, that'd be at 35 feet to have an 8/12 pitch.
Which is why we need the 35-foot height limit. Just saying.
Yeah.
Right, I think, I think if the 30-degree angle is about a 7/12 pitch, maybe just slightly less, so you're not quite there. But one of the things we're finding out in design is with the lower pitch roofs, people are still utilizing PVs. They're just racking them up to meet whatever required angle may be. So flat roofs are a great candidate for photovoltaic panels.
Well, now you've opened up a whole new discussion.
That happens.
And let me just respond, like flat roofs, fine. You're not going to see the panels up on a flat roof, but if you've got panels at an angle on an angled roof that are visible from the street. It just, it's weird.
Mm-hmm. Becomes part of the aesthetic.
I'd rather see them laying on the roof and lowering, the efficiency goes down, but at least the aesthetics.
And that's typically what happens. They just accommodate the pitch of the roof and the efficiency diminishes. So.
But you get my point, like, if you're trying to encourage solar access, don't make it more difficult to do an 812 pitch at this latitude.
So you would increase the angle so you could go high.
I think it might be just having to do with the single story is the threshold would be 25 feet, not 20 feet. Or you'd put in one of the exemptions, or you'd put in as an exemption, if you have an 812 pitch southerly facing, you're exempt. Or you can go to 25 or something like that.
But that's also our building height, potentially our building height limit, 25 feet, correct?
Right.
The general height limit's 25, but with design review, you can go to 30 for architectural features.
For a 2-story or 1-story?
For any building.
Any building.
So I'm clear that the 812 comes into play because in terms of degrees, that's what approximately our latitude, the 32 something degrees. Right. Okay.
So maybe we need to go back and rethink the building heights. It's kind of a conundrum.
I'm kind of missing something because the
Yeah.
farther your building is set back, you can still pitch it up because you'd be under that 30-degree envelope. The further it goes back, that angle stays. It doesn't move down. It stays. So the further the building's back, the higher you can go. You can go to 25 feet. It's not, well, I think what you're talking about is a fixed setback. And this is not designed that way.
The footprint can float.
Yeah, the footprint can float. So that only comes into play when you're so many feet from your property line, your structure so many feet from there, would you run into that? And it depends on, that being that perfect angle you're looking for. If it moves back even a little bit, you're going to be under the 25 feet because you can still pitch it that way. And that was kind of where I'm coming from a bit.
I don't get that. Your building height would still be over 20 feet.
Yeah, we're talking two different things here. You're talking about the solar
access,
which is what Paul's talking about, just the height of the building.
Yeah, the building height's a whole different thing. But what I'm saying is you don't necessarily lose.
Well, in fact, if you had the right slope on the roof, it would really cut down the solar access because you wouldn't be impacting the sun because of the way the roof is pitched. If you see what I mean? Anyway.
Yeah, the height can be the limiting factor, but we've got a 25-foot for a single story. We can go to 25 feet, which is what we require.
But what I'm getting at is someone's coming in for a building permit and they go, we've got our solar house all figured out, 812 pit.
New structure or remodel?
Let's say new or remodel. And at the counter they go, oh, you're 22 feet. You need to go to planning commission. What can I do to not have to go to planning commission? Lower it so that, and then you lose some of the efficiency. I just think it's one of those unintended consequences.
Yeah, we might want to ask the guy at the city of Santa Barbara. He basically told us he didn't have really any, they get very few issues that come up because of this ordinance, which was striking to me. The biggest problem they have when the ordinance is in place is actually educating the architects. Sorry, Steve. And staff.
It happens.
And staff. That's probably the biggest issue, which is another reason for having that 15-foot plate that we talked about, so you don't have to run into it all the time. For the most part, what we felt after the meeting was this would be an impact outside on the lots that are up, like Foothill and signal, and really when the homes are close to, together, and so you've got a home being built close to the northerly lot line, and, it's probably the house behind it is the same height or lower. There's going to be an impact. That doesn't consider, however, the house being lower, which kind of makes sense. One of the reasons they haven't had any trouble with it is because they've never altered that. And that seems to actually, when I came away from the meeting, that was the one thing I thought we shouldn't change. Because the minute we change that, in other words, you're looking at just a plane. So if the house is stepped down next door or stepped above, you don't go there. You just look at that plane. And it avoids, a lot of complications. And he basically said, at least what I heard was, that's worked out actually pretty well, that they've kept it that way. Would you say that's correct?
I agree. Well, what's interesting and sustainable about this valley is most of it is built on a south-facing slope. So which is ideal for passive solar and other things, but also, your northerly neighbor is typically higher than you. In most cases where there's any, yeah.
So one solution would be an exception to those owners who are builders, let's say, who are proposing photovoltaics on their roofs and would like to maximize the angle and allow them to exceed the 20-foot, height limit or whatever it is. There's a trade-off there. Yeah, I mean, potentially with the neighbor behind him, but what's happening is the person who's going after that is actually doing something about it, and there's the encouragement factor.
Yeah, and I don't know if you'd even go so far as they're proposing PV, because then, the next owner, it'd be perfectly set up for the next one or the next one, If the important part would be the south-facing,
But it would be an exception for that.
And
that pitch.
I'm saying an exemption, so they don't have to go to planning commission to
No, that's
go to 25.
That's good.
Yeah.
Agree.
What was the gentleman's name with the city over there?
Danny Cato?
Yeah, Danny was great. In fact, he encouraged us to ask questions, and maybe we could just send him a little note saying, what about the...
Yeah, we could do that.
I'd like to know what, I got to think that's going to have come up.
Well, do they have a 20-foot height limit? I kind of doubt that Santa Barbara...
Yeah, I kind of doubt they do.
I think they have a 30-foot height limit.
But you still have to comply with this.
Still have to comply, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You start with your 12 and you go back at your 30-degree angle.
No, I think I understand what Commissioner...
I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with the 20-foot threshold.
The other thing that he did mention was the 12, correct me if I'm wrong, because I may have heard things differently than you,
Yeah.
Rob. The 12-foot was, I don't want to say it was arbitrary, it wasn't arbitrary, but he said that that's something you can change. So when you come up, on that, where the ground hits the building, you go out to the northerly property line, you come up 12 feet, then you go 30 degrees. You can change that 12-foot as well. It's just, do you remember the rationale behind that?
I don't think I do. I know that they chose the 18-foot height for the R2 and R3 zones because typically the buildings are taller there, and they wanted to make allowance for that.
Stories.
Yeah.
And there was a couple important things you just reminded me that you should know. In the city of Santa Barbara, when you abut a commercial district, it doesn't apply to commercial. So the commercial next door doesn't have to comply with this. And that has worked well for them. It's an understood thing. If you buy a lot next to commercial, that commercial property does not, and vice versa. When you're in the home next to commercial, you're still subject to that ordinance, even though there's a commercial building that's higher than you next door. So it was very clear, and that seemed to be good, because there's no gray areas. It's just that's the way it applies. And the reality is that if you stay within this, you're still able to build a nice home on a bigger lot. You know, you've got more flexibility on smaller lots, you got less flexibility, but that's where the solar impact is greater, is on the small squished-in lots. And again, in our downtown area where that is the case, it wouldn't apply. Unless someone's going to try and build two-story.
Right, because they're under 15 feet in height.
Well, and that's exactly why we want to do the ordinance. We don't
Right.
want someone building two-story to impact a neighbor that didn't have that impact
Exactly.
before.
Okay.
The other thing that he mentioned is when, a lot of times when you have, it's very rare that you'll need a modification. And he said it very, very rarely would people come in for modification. So when they did, usually they could show through the shadow studies, and he actually had some there, and he would be willing to make copies of those. When you do the shadow study, you show that the roof line of the house next door blocks the shadow anyway, so it really doesn't have an impact on the house. Is usually when they're doing a modification, that shadow carries, and there's a roof there, and the shadow's just going over a roof. Well, it's not having an impact on the house next door. So if someone can show that through a shadow study, generally they would give the exception or the modification. But again, they were very, very rare.
On page 5 of 9 at the bottom, on that height limitation, why is it 18 feet in R3 and RS, and then it starts at 12 feet in the lower density zones?
Because in the lower density zones, you tend to have more single-story buildings, and in the higher density zones, you tend to have more taller buildings. And so they were making allowance for that, so that they're assuming that your neighbor R3 building is also going to be very tall, and that your tall building isn't going to affect their solar access. Whereas in a residential low-density zone, you may be a one-story building, and so they wanted to keep it down lower.
And just to be clear, we're just talking residential here. We're not talking the downtown commercial zoning.
Just residential.
Here's, I guess, what I was struggling with is in the lower density, you've got a bigger lot. You can go all over the place. So, you see what I mean?
Well, that's true if you have a bigger lot, but we have neighborhoods that have fairly small lots as they do. And
Not
we have
not in the low density, though. The low density are
well, in single family.
10,000.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, with a bigger lot, you have a lot more flexibility, and you can just avoid the issue.
I think the thing that I walked away with talking to Ann and Rob after our meeting was, if we do this ordinance seems to work well for the city of Santa Barbara, and you can tweak it. If we want to tweak it, we can tweak it, which is fine. But we only want to tweak certain areas, probably, to make it simple. Yet, it can get extremely complicated for staff. And that could be an issue for us. So, because, you know, they've got a lot of planners there, and he actually is the guy in charge of training people. And he offered that, you know, if you need me to train your staff, I'd be glad. He's got the little 3D box, and he does the whole light. Believe me, it's very helpful. But you can see where it could go in a larger city like that. For us in Ojai, if we go with some sort of solar ordinance, I think what we need to focus on is if we tweak it, what the ramifications will be. And number two, how can we make it easy and the simplest to interpret by both staff and applicants? You know, and I've kind of felt like this would be a great opportunity for doing diagrams, less text and more diagrams. Might be good. Like Paul, you were mentioning that city that did nothing but diagrams. It on the surface, when you look at this, it doesn't seem that bad, but that seemed to be the challenge, is how, you know, keeping our staff trained on this could be quite a challenge, particularly if we have, you know, and I know we never have temporary people in Ojai. that could be a big problem. We might have to have like Ann come in for the next 30 years just to retrain people on the solar ordinance only, not anything else, so. On the other hand, we don't have a lot of building going on here, so that helps us. But that also hurts us because the institutional knowledge kind of dries up every time. And then all of a sudden you get someone come in every 3 years going, hey, I'm up on the foothill and I'm building a 2-story house and I'm right next to someone and everyone's going, oh, that's right, there's that solar ordinance.
Troy, I've visited other city sites and have seen on their site they'll have special videos, right? And this would be ideal for like a computer, animation thing. Last, 5 minutes, someone could see, that, because it's about visualization. Not everyone gets it, some more than others, and I can realize how helpful something like that could be in understanding the principles. So, something to consider.
So on, getting back to Troy, you were saying about diagrams. Attachment C, page 15 of 16, they have actually, the diagrams are very self-explanatory if you...
Except for it's not in 3D.
Yeah.
It's not in 3D.
That's not 3D. Those are the ones that he presented, and he actually had some plans. The other thing we talked about, and it literally is, if we have something like this and it's a not sure, we could literally send it to Santa Barbara and say, can you determine this for us? And they would probably be willing to look at it because they do have it down. And again, it's a very, very rare time that we would probably even need to pull this out.
There might be I'm suggesting a word added to that troublesome.
What page are you at again?
To the bottom of 5 of 9.
Okay.
And it's basically what you're saying is you can pick, say a roof has several different elevations or heights. So you're going to have maybe 5 solar access heights that you got to check. And then the building height as measured in our code, 1 building height, correct? Maximum building height.
Mm-hmm.
So then what you're going to do then is none of those points can exceed a certain amount.
Correct.
And so I think at the end here, any height limitation imposed by this section shall be in addition to any other height limitation imposed in section 10-2.404, such that the more restrictive height limitation points shall apply. So
Say that
it makes
again?
it more clear that.
Oh, okay.
So it makes it more clear that you're analyzing different points. It's not just one height and that,
Right.
and that's it.
Did you say not limitation? Shall not apply?
No, the point shall apply.
Oh, shall apply.
Shall apply.
Okay. Such that the more restrictive height limitation.
Points shall
Shall
apply. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Any height limitation, but
Part of that complicated.
You've interpreted exactly right. If you have multi-heights, they're different levels, they'll go to the northerly property line, they'll come straight back, and they'll do every single point. And every one of those points has to be below the 30% angle.
Right,
Yes,
but
if
they
they
might be, that might be much lower than the building height that's allowed. So you wouldn't impose that most restrictive solar access height to the overall building height at some other point.
Yeah, they do.
They would impose the more restrictive at every point, which I think is what your language says.
Yeah.
No, my language is saying you comply with the solar access points.
Correct.
Wherever they apply, so you can't go above that envelope.
Right.
But you can have a building height
Above our building height limitation to comply with, for solar for like solar panels.
Now I'm confused.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't make any exceptions to the solar what they call the solar access point, unless you file a modification. So you couldn't go above that imaginary, plane at any point. And the reason you have to do it for a point is.
Oh, yeah,
because you
but
can
that's
also
why it's points, you see. Because it might be 10 or 12 feet at the northerly part, and the solar access point might be 20 feet over here. So you don't say your maximum building height is 12 feet.
No, it's different depending on how far back you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there are multiple building
There are,
heights.
there are, yes.
What I found confusing, and I'm just not reading it right, but under 5.9, under height limitations, it starts out by saying the maximum elevation of each point on a structure in a residential zone as measured from the base elevation shall not exceed, and it goes on. And it doesn't, I'm not interpreting that as, in terms of it relating to the northerly, the language, the way it's written, to the northerly property line.
It's not. So the base elevation is the point where the closest point to the northerly property line where the building meets the natural
Right.
grade.
Right.
And then that base elevation is the same on the whole property once it's established.
But in that first sentence, they're saying the maximum elevation of each point on a structure in a residential zone. I mean, it should be the maximum elevation of each point as it relates to the northerly face of the elevation of the building.
No, but
It's a little more clarification.
it's by definition, the base elevation.
It all
Always-
defers to the
always.
base elevation.
Yes.
So the assumption is just that.
Yeah,
And it's not any point on the building. That's,
Right.
I mean, it's,
There's only one base elevation. Once you establish the base elevation, there's a plane created,
Mhm.
and then you're measuring up from that plane.
right.
And then any point that exceeds the solar height limit is the distance between the solar height limit and that new base.
Okay.
So.
Okay, it's about base elevation.
Yeah, and the reason that Santa Barbara has a problem is if you just had a northerly property line, which should actually be that way, and the house is here, that's easy. The problem was when you had, a northerly property line like this.
Two property lines.
Right, and that's where it gets a little tricky. So, because you're never doing this from the southerly property line, or the easterly, or the westerly. It's all, so then you have to define the northerly property line, right? So when you get those funny, and they have a lot of these in Santa Barbara, they have to take each one of those points and go back. And you could have one like this, and it could step over here too. So, and no offense, but architects like to push the limit sometimes on small lots. Yeah, but typically what they'll do is they'll build a house like this, and then they'll step it again, which is architecturally kind of a nice thing to do sometimes. But it does get a little complicated there. But it's by definition only the northerly line, because you don't have a shade issue on any other part of the house.
Yeah, so I had a question, getting back to my trade, as far as landscaping is concerned. So you're protecting your neighbor with the shadow. So I have a home and I put up 40-foot trees along the boundary, and straight away it's going to shadow the neighbor. So how did...
You kept the height restrictions on the solar residence, right?
So,
Well, that's true, and they have not regulated that in Santa Barbara, and apparently it hasn't been a major problem.
They do have I know, a limitation on your hedge heights. At least, I haven't worked in every district. I know they've got a lot of districts, so to speak, in Santa Barbara, but the ones that I have worked on, there was a height limitation. Typically, it's 6 feet. That's for hedging material. I can't remember, and I think there is a slight setback, but it might only be 5 feet for a tree, but it's worth noting because the system could go null and void with the plant material.
You did mention that, and you're correct. There's a hedge height, but
Yeah.
like he said, people do let them grow and don't trim them, so, but it's a code enforcement issue on the hedge. But yeah, you're right, yeah, they do. But trees, we asked them the question on trees. Well, this is not meant to curb mean neighbors. They have the right to do what they want to do with their trees, and it's a little difficult to tell people you have to cut your tree down, so they don't approach that.
Because trees are the ultimate photosynthesis machine anyway.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
So this is a discussion item?
Well, I guess what I'd seek the guidance of the commission on the next step, which I think would be to bring this back and probably craft the exception language that was discussed and notice the public and have a public hearing. So it would come back, we would just craft the language, notice it, and bring it back to you, and see what happens. And we'll craft that language, that notice very carefully.
And
I'm talking about sending a letter to every residential property owner. I think we should do that.
Let's see, what else can we throw into that mailing? How about the parking issue with residential? Isn't this how the Senate does it? Like, if you want to get something, you tack on what you really want?
Sounds like a farm driver.
so we're going to then it's going to come back to us.
So if you agree with that, we'll prepare a notice, and so we'll be re-advertising the hearing. We'll pick an appropriate meeting to do that.
And you're going to send letters out for that meeting too?
Yes, we will.
Oh.
So would the meeting be almost like a workshop where we may want even, I don't know if you want to have some samples or something you're showing on the screen on how it works. And I'm just thinking it would probably clarify things a lot easier as we were discussing. I don't know how complicated that is or not, but just a suggestion.
I like the idea of doing it in a workshop format because I think it's a little less formal. It's not like, here's this regulation and we're going to implement it. It's more like, we'd like to get your input on it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
A little demonstration, make it kind of user-friendly.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's, for Ojai, is a very important thing. It goes far too, and people feel that they're involved and their opinions are also noted.
You just sent a flyer to all the business owners that had business permits in Ojai for the styrofoam cup ban or something.
We've been doing a lot of mailing this year.
Yes.
We sent a postcard to everybody about the lighting ordinance, and we got, about 5 responses? Oh, how many we get?
We've gotten probably a couple handfuls. But we did that to the tenants or property owners. This would be directed to the property owners because they own the property and the height would pertain to their building. So we'll craft a notice that goes out to property owners based on things. The styrofoam was based on the business license information.
And did we get very many responses from that?
No, we got about 5 responses. One was a really good suggestion about how to handle packaging materials. And a couple were, why are you guys regulating so much? And a couple were, we support it.
In the lighting ordinance, I would state that we've sent out for tenants or property owners, we've sent out approximately 2,500 notices. And that was to residentially zoned properties. Right.
And you got a couple handfuls.
Mm-hmm. Although I understand there's a lot more on the social network going around. I've seen certain threads on Facebook where people have spent a lot of time discussing it. I wish they'd discuss it with us so we can try to bring forward the changes that they'd like. But
Is there a general tone with those responses that you received on the lighting ordinance?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
Oh, was there kind of a general tone, or is it a mixed bag on the
It was
lighting?
mixed. A lot of people, I would agree with the comments that some felt that we were over-regulating and that there were more important issues to be dealing with than having your porch light turned off at 10. There were some that were in support and some wanting to report neighbors. So, I mean, it really was a mixed bag.
So do we make a motion now to bring this forward again to another meeting?
In a workshop format after sending a notice to the property owners.
Okay, so I'd like to make that motion.
I will
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
And to be clear, that's going to be a notification of a workshop?
Notification of a
Yeah.
workshop.
All right, we move on to item number 5, text amendment TA 13-04 to an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Ojai, California, amending sections 10-2.1709, 10-6.401, and 10-6.403 of Title 10 of the Ojai Municipal Code related to implementation component of second dwelling unit compliance program guidelines of the 2014 to 2021 housing element of the Ojai General Plan.
Thank you. This is a pretty straightforward request. What we are asking the Planning Commission to do is make a recommendation to the City Council with regard to some existing language that we have that was implemented as a part of the housing element, both the Cycle 4 and it continues into the Cycle 5. And it relates to the second unit amnesty program. The name change would be to a compliance program. And then the aspect of the termination date, because we had to get an ombudsman on board and we've had to do certain things that have slowed the process a little bit, we're just really on the upswing of things. We're seeing people come in, we're contacting people that have paid for the sanitation district fees, and so we're actively being able to pursue things. But the interviewing for the ombudsman took some time and things that way. And so theoretically, based on the existing code, the program is supposed to terminate in June of 2014. That is the simultaneous date that we would accept applications. Both of those things, although I did not state it in this, we will ask that both the application submittal and the termination date be extended. And the way it is reading is that it would go to the City Council, that it would be in effect until the City Council establishes by ordinance or resolution a termination date for those applications to be submitted and the program to be terminated. And then we are priorly asking for the update to the compliance guidelines to have all the name changes be done and also the dates to change. So at this point, that's what we're requesting this evening. I just want to alert the Planning Commission that there will be future changes that are going to be recommended to the second unit ordinance. As it's been adopted, there's been discussion based on the Building Appeals Board, the City Council, and I think even the Planning Commission has areas that they want to see changed on that. That is something that we are pursuing and will be coming back as a part of some of the implementation aspects for the Cycle 5. I know that the Building Appeals Board at the end of January, they are having a meeting and they will be specifically discussing some of the building aspects that are in our current guidelines for the second unit, along with some of the planning aspects. And so depending upon what they're recommending, that'll be brought forward to the Planning Commission and then on to City Council as recommendations. But tonight, what's before you is strictly what's on the books today to extend the program, both for the applications to be submitted and the termination date, to extend that and allow City Council to do that via resolution as they go forward, and the name change in both the ordinance and in the guidelines. If you have questions, I'll be happy to try to answer those.
I don't have a question, I have a recommendation on change.
Yes.
By the way, I just want to say one of the things that I really love about the way we're working now, and particularly with staff, is 8 years ago, if you wanted to change an ordinance, it seemed like it was, it would take years. And this is really meant to be a living document, as is really what you just said. And I think, I'm actually at a point now where I'm comfortable saying that we don't have to make a condition of our ordinances that they're meant to be changed to get things changed. It seems like we're doing this routinely, which I think is what we need to do to make them better. So I congratulate you, Ann, and staff on that. I think this is great, and I do know it's going to be changed, so I didn't nitpick through it, and I don't think you want us to. But I do think on page 3 of 5, section 2, the very first section 10-21709.
Yes.
F. Second unit compliance program. We got rid of the until because we're not going to have an end date on this, which is actually what we recommended. The owners of existing residential units as defined in section 10-1709A3. It says which existed prior to January 1, 2006. I would change that to say which existed prior to the effective date of this ordinance, or January 1st, 2014, whichever is earlier, which is probably going to be later than that. And the reason is that date came out because we were actually reviewing this way back when. And you do get into problems legally when you set a date on an ordinance like this. It's actually unlawful, and you could be challenged on it. But when you set a date in the future, it's kind of like you can't, in a homeowners association, you cannot make up a rule that would penalize an existing homeowner that's already done something wrong. So it's very similar to that. But if we set it, and I don't really care, it could be as of the effective date of the ordinance would be fine. I think it would be better. It also encourage people that have violated up to date this ordinance to come in and count those as well. Otherwise, we're not going to get those in.
Are you speaking specifically if somebody had built something last year?
Yeah, they could still come in.
That aspect is something that the Building Appeals Board is also wanting to discuss. I would not want to change anything, if possible, at this point in time. And the reason is, this is the way it was adopted, was the January 2006. And there were certain reasons for that, and you're correct, it was because
of the timing, yeah.
Right, the timing on all of that. I think there needs to be some weighing of, if we were to change it to bring it up to today, as the effective date of this ordinance, that means somebody that was last weekend trying to build something on to try to come in, they're going to be able to get credit and have a break in fees and everything else up to the date. And I think the reason they looked at the 2006 date was there was a definite starting point when it was being discussed, and that the housing numbers were related to that year, and that we wanted to calculate things. And I'm just concerned that if we change it to today's date or whenever the ordinance is in effect, that from a building standpoint, from the code enforcement complaints that are active right now, that people that have gone out and built things in the last year, I think it needs to be weighed. Doesn't mean that it shouldn't be changed to what you were saying, but I think there needs to be some evaluation of that to look at what are the consequences of doing that. So I would be a little hesitant to change that specific, but I think that you have the opportunity within the next couple of months to see this come back. That's the direction that the Building Appeals Board is going towards, and I already know that there's certain things on cycle 5 that we're trying to get turned around real quick. So I would encourage you to hold back on that and keep that in your back pocket. I do know that is specifically one item that needs some evaluation, and it is being considered.
Okay. Well, again, I was here back then, and it was set as a date they were passing it. It's not a deal breaker for me. So, but I don't like the fact that the city of Ventura got in trouble for doing this, and it's a big problem when you set dates back like that. There is some rationale to set it within a period of time.
Okay.
To cover, what you're talking about. So I could understand wanting to weigh in on that. But I do think if we set it January 1st, 2014, no one's going to be able to get a house together in that quick bit of time. That hasn't already started. But if there are I didn't see any existing cases maybe I missed something.
We have a couple that our inspector felt, at least in one case in particular, that the person was obviously trying to get something built to come in to then try to
Okay.
pursue it under the second unit ordinance.
Okay, so we may need to get a negotiated date that's sooner than 2006, but not.
But as I said, I know that there are people on the Building Appeals Board that are actively pursuing, and I think it's going to come closer
Okay.
to current.
That's fine. Good. So I'll hold that off unless,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So we need to make a move.
Correct.
Yeah, we,
Mhm.
yeah, so,
I move that accept the recommendations made by staff. Conduct a public hearing to review text amendment TA 13-04 regarding amending sections 10-2.1709, 10-6.401, and 10-6.403 of Title 10 of the Ojai Municipal Code and the implementation component of the second dwelling unit compliance program of the 2014 through 2021 housing element of the general plan. And also consider resolution number PC 13-21, 21, recommending that the city council adopt text amendment 13-04 and accept the associated CEQA determination.
I will second that.
Okay, I've got a question. Like, didn't we just do that, or are you recommending that we do that?
We're recommending to the city council for their review, correct?
For them to conduct a public hearing? Because we just did
We
it,
did,
right?
yeah, I was wondering.
It's an ordinance, and so it needs to go forward to the city council, and you are the recommending body to the city council.
they have to do 2 read-throughs or something?
Mm-hmm, correct. And so the language.
Well, I
you
see what you're saying.
See, if you look at Exhibit A, this is.
So we're recommending approval, we're not recommending that
Correct.
they do a hearing.
yeah, we recommend your approval, correct, yes.
I just want to
You're correct.
clarify that.
You're
We
correct.
just did our public hearing.
You're correct.
Okay.
Good point.
So do you want to amend that wording a bit?
use the term hearing?
You
You
read,
read that, yeah, excuse me, go ahead, yeah,
To review.
which we just
We just did
technically
that.
did.
You don't need to reread it. You're
Just
You're
clarify.
recommending resolution PC 1321 to the city council.
got it.
That's all that matters.
Number 2.
I'm awake.
Number 2.
Let me revise that by saying, the motion stands as recommending PC 13-21,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
recommending that the city council adopt the text amendment 13-04 and accept the associated CEQA determination.
And Merck, second.
I will re-second that.
Thank you. Ready for roll call? Crabtree,
yes.
Becker.
Yes.
Foster.
Yes.
Merck,
Yes.
Nicklin.
Yes.
Nolan.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll go on to informational items. Item number 6, director reports and director actions.
You have a list of items that were brought forward to the Community Development Department, a couple of tree trimmings, and the event at Rancho Inn, and also a directional sign. It was on the directional sign, we were not able to approve it because it was off-site signage, and so that's where that one stands. But otherwise, if you have questions on any of those other specific items, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
I'd just like to comment that the event, I don't know if anybody else attended that event at the Ojai Rancho Inn, but it was immensely popular and it was a fabulous event. So I appreciate all your work on getting that approved.
We'll move on then to item number 7, current code enforcement activity.
We're still pursuing things, and we have a number of active cases, and our building inspector, code enforcement officer is actively going out daily and rechecking on people and working on the details of things. So we're trying to continue to make steps and progress on each one.
Thank you. Item number 8, future agenda items.
Well, your January 1st agenda is canceled. It is New Year's Day. You have a meeting with the City Council for a joint workshop on January 14th, Tuesday. You'll follow up here on Wednesday. You'll have a busy week in City Hall. On Wednesday, we have a singular wireless monopole at Grand Avenue at the Lutheran Church coming in. And we also have a conceptual review. And I believe we also will have the landscape ordinance potentially coming to the Planning Commission on the 15th also. So we have a few things there. And then as far as that joint Planning Commission, City Council meeting, I'd like to ask if the Planning Commission has specific topics that you would like to make sure that get included on that agenda, and we'll forward that on. So I'd like to discuss that.
I just had one question. When we were dealing with the recycle and, moving it on to another meeting, and we said to the applicant about being February, can't it come onto the January 15th?
It depends on whether we're able to get the information that is going to be required for that by then from the applicant.
Okay, because I'm sure she wants to get it sorted out as fast as possible.
Right. We will work directly with her.
Thank you. Planning Commission Subcommittee reports.
Excuse me, I have an item on that, future agenda items. And this is clearly not for my benefit, but on that joint meeting,
Yes.
I want to reiterate that I think to save Sherry time and you time and everyone time, that the Planning Commission have established a format for plans when required to be the 11 by 17, no more, no bigger than that. And that if all possible, in our budgeting for next year, we include, instead of having paperwork, so just have computers here. And man, as an applicant, those plans are super expensive that they give us. Having those done are pretty expensive. They're several $100s.
And I had.
Then we couldn't read the.
And then we couldn't read the small stuff, yeah.
And I have brought that after the Planning Commission brought it up to us. We have pursued that and let the city manager's office know for budgeting purposes and things that way. But if, I think we can put that on the topic for City Council to let them know that there is definite interest from the Planning Commission on that. I mean, it would be a good topic just to at least pinpoint it so that they're aware that you guys are definitely interested in that.
Yeah, and then when we do have to have plans, because there's going to be exceptions, right? The 11 by 17 as a standard format is acceptable to everyone? I thought we discussed that. Was it too small?
It could be.
But it's all right if we have PDFs.
Yeah.
Right, because then you can scroll.
Every single
Right.
item with plan, every single item and their plan is posted to the website.
All right, so then if we
Good
get,
point.
if we
Very
get,
good.
We brought that up after the
Every
last
single- When I send you
discussion.
your email with the agenda,
it's
you
there.
click on that link, every plan and every staff report.
And we just need to know that you don't need the packet, and we won't.
I always figure
She
you can
won't.
get it from there easier than me emailing you all these PDFs.
The point that I'm making, though, is we need to go to a zero paper agenda. And we should articulate, I mean, Steve's the exception to the rule because he knows everything. He's here, he's a community architect. We should have a standard that we give to any architect that says, you don't have to submit plans. You just submit us a
No,
PDF.
We do tell the architects that already.
Yeah, but we keep making them print things when we really shouldn't be. We need to get computers in here so we don't do that. It's just ridiculous.
Well, yeah, we did provide them because you don't have computers. So would you have not wanted the plans tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I could have done without the plans by going to the computer, but we really, in all fairness to planning commissioners, there needs to be a system here so that, we can just look
We'll
at it.
put that
That's
on the
why-
workshop, at least have it as the line
Yeah.
item to bring it up, because I think it's important for for the city council to hear you state this, so that then they can
Right.
budget the money.
Yeah, I
Right.
agree. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I just
No.
know that I've spent thousands of dollars on plans with this city,
Yeah,
and that's stupid.
Mm-hmm.
That's really stupid.
yes, it is.
So that's my point.
I sure like the idea of reducing the size, because there's no way we can read them up here anyways,
No.
unless you do your, but what I do like about paper is the ability to mark it up, and there's a certain connection there that you can't get on a computer, at least I don't. So I see the need for still some paper format, but let's reduce it. It could be, actually 12 by 18 is better than 11 by 17. The problem with it is the text gets small, but if we have it in, and then we do have it in computer format, we can do that research on our screens and then mark up accordingly. So,
And then on the other item which Lawrence brought up, this recycling thing is going to be a problem, and we already know it. So there's no clear solution to this. We all want to have a nice recycling center. I think we need to get creative and really fast, maybe working with Greg, Public Works, a couple of us go around and start looking at potential long-term sites. This is the kind of thing where we're going to have to help our applicant because she's providing a community service. She's doing more than, being a small business that's just trying to open and make a profit. She actually provides a heck of a community service. And wherever we put this thing, there's going to be the NIMBYs. And that is not acceptable. We can't just say, well, we're not going to have it. Let the county deal with it. That's not right. We should be working with the county and with ourselves to figure out a long-term site for her, perhaps even finding her some grant money or the city helping her to, or anyone, it doesn't have to be her, to build and have a recycling center that we can be proud of. What we all know is that we're not real proud of that site for one or another reasons. That's the underlying tone we have here. So we have to go out and help her. And I'll be the first one to volunteer to work with any one of you to do some site locating, whether it's in the county or the city, and work with the county and ourselves to see if we can find a more permanent location. If we have to give her a temporary location, let's just say, look, this is going to be a temporary location until we, the city, can identify a long-term site and make exceptions. That way the community knows what we're doing, they know we have a deadline, and there's no underlying tone of, gee, we're uncomfortable with this. I think we just need to be out with it. But we have got to help create this. We just have to, because there's no good answer to it right now. So I think that needs to be a future agenda item somehow.
Yeah, and did the applicant indicate that after this one-year lease that it looked hopeful that she was going to get to stay at that site, where she would, of course, have to build the restroom and what have you? Did it look?
We have not one way or the other. I think that there's been, because of the questions from the surrounding community, I think the property owner may be questioning whether they want to give a lease longer than that. That potentially is an issue. And then I think the expense, if she does have to provide a permanent restroom facility that has a hookup to the sanitation district, you're looking at a $17,000 charge, along with the improvements, rightly so, but there's a lot of costs involved to provide this community service.
I mean, there's got to be some place, public, one of our yards that we own, we manage a very large shopping center in another community. And what strikes me is, and there's a Vons there, is part of that lease is that Vons has the right to have that center on property. And, we have to work with the recycling, with both the grocery store and the recycling center to locate a site so the community can bring their stuff here. The problem that we have, that we don't have down there, is we've got residential neighborhoods behind Vons. I mean, Vons is the logical place for it, we all know that. But the minute you stick it behind Vons, which is where we'd like to see it, those neighbors are going to hear those cans going in that, piled into those wire things all day and night, and that's not fair. So we have an unusual situation. But I feel for this woman. There's just no way I'd want to sink a long-term lease in there and put all the improvements that we're going to require.
And then find out.
So she's not going to, there's a high likelihood that she won't do it. But
Right.
we have to have it.
But we need it.
We need it.
And we want it.
So we need to, I think, before
yeah.
she even steps in here again, we need to have done a little bit of helping out and say, well, we're going to work with you to find a permanent location, almost like a quasi-public works project to figure this out.
Right.
And it may be in the county, don't get me wrong,
Right.
but we need to work with the county to make it happen too.
Well, the other thing we can do is staff can facilitate a meeting between, say, 2 planning commissioners and her and staff, and sit down and go through what we need if she continues at the current site for whether it be a temporary or permanent, but then also bring forth some of these alternative ideas. I appreciate what you're saying. So we'll be happy to do that. If it's one or two members, whatever you would like.
But are there any other items you want brought up at the joint meeting other than the
Zero
computers?
paper.
Oh, I had an item. We've just started the process for the Strategic Growth Council grant, and we're actually increasing our, scope of the project. And I think it would be good to let City Council know if they will have any input on it. Because at, some point they're going to have to, there are some funds that are required, matching funds for that grant. So I think it's a consideration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think it'd be good to have Rob go over the solar ordinance with the city council again, so they're aware.
The which ordinance?
The solar ordinance that we
Okay.
just talked about tonight, so they're aware of it. That'll kind of raise the public awareness of it.
Okay.
Can we call you tomorrow, Chair?
Yes, definitely.
The brain's just not functioning right.
Sleep on it.
Sherry, do we need a motion on the cancellation of the January 1st? Okay.
So we'll move on to item number 9, Planning Commission Subcommittee reports.
Well, I just mentioned that we've started the process for the Strategic Growth Council grant through the Complete Streets Subcommittee. And we are starting on January 6th. We're going to be meeting every Monday at 8:30. And Lawrence, I'm not sure, I know you're on Complete Streets, but if you still want to be on it, or if another commissioner does, or if anyone wants to help, I know, Paul, you got back to me, and I know you're out of town a lot, but I appreciate any input. And the application is due February 28th, so we will be meeting probably weekly. So if anyone wants to join, or if you have any questions or you want to help, let me know. And then, of course, it sounds like the water ordinance is going to be presented in
Yes.
February.
January 15th,
Oh, January
potentially, the
15th,
landscape
okay.
ordinance, it's the state, and it includes
Right.
the state
The
mandate,
water.
water.
Okay.
Right.
Good. I think that's it.
Thank you.
Is there anyone on the commission besides Mr. Becker that would like to try to sit down with the recycling people? If we want.
I could do that.
Okay, either way,
Be fine.
great. Thank you. We'll call and we will get that set up.
Thank you. Our City Council liaison, I don't see anyone here tonight. So with that, I'd just like to wish everybody a happy holiday and adjourn the meeting.